Welcome back to the Sachsenring for the opening round of EURO MOTO in 2026. Bright and sunny skies and very warm weather conditions as we get ready to bring you the Supersport race, the second of the weekend here. Yesterday, we saw Daniel Blin taking victory from second on the grid. He was closely followed home by Dirk Geiger and Lennox Lehmann. Let's run you through how the grid, though, looks for race two. Geiger on pole position with Blin and Lehmann alongside. Row two is headed by Marcel Brenner with Julius Ankel Frankson alongside. Then it's Marvin Siebdraft in sixth position. Luis de Vizcaya in the third row of the grid with Philip Novotny and then Philip Feigl alongside. Then Freddie Heinrich, who we just heard from on the grid a couple of moments ago, with Lorenzo Fellon and Junior Caesar Ruhrig in 12th position. Row 5 is occupied by Jörg Erwig, who returns to the championship, and he'll line up P13 on the Ducati Panigale V2 machine, with Jinrik Skopek on the 14th position, with Marvin Krimes in 15th position. Then Til Bersikowski in 16th place, Peter Feigl in 17th, and Philip Kuchik in 18th, and completing the grid. Well, my name is Tom Brooks. Alongside me, Adam Weller here to guide you through the action. Adam, Supersport yesterday looked to be an exciting affair. Just 4/100ths of a second separating Blin and Geiger to the checkered flag. What do you think we were expecting today?
I think in the broader sense, more of the same. It looked like a very close race at the front of yesterday's Supersport encounter. Daniel Blin often looked like he had the strongest bike out there, the Polish racer, but he did make it a bit difficult for himself potentially, or at the very least he gave us quite a show on the final lap. As you said, a run to the checkered flag that he just about came out on top of. We heard yesterday in the paddock that there were quite a few riders at the very end of the race struggling in terms of tyre wear as well, which is always a looming spectre here at the Sachsenring with so many fast left-hand bends. We'll see if everybody's learned their lesson and maybe there's a little bit more tyre conservation in at the early phase of the race. Looking at that front row though, Tom, Dirk Geiger, Daniel Blin, Lennox Lehmann, that is a very good top three, and I think we're in for an exciting race.
Yeah, completely agree with that one. And three different manufacturers on that front row of the grid as well. Yamaha, Ducati, and then, of course, actually, two different manufacturers, beg your pardon, because Yamaha for Lennox Lehmann for this year as well. You've got a Honda on the second row of the grid, a couple of Hondas, in fact, with Enrico Frelson and Marvin Siebdraft in 5th and 6th position, respectively. Riders are heading off on their warm-up lap. Then it'll be 15-lapper for them to contend with here at the Sachsenring, and keen to see how this one is going to go down. Dirk Geiger, as we say, starting this one on pole position on board that Yamaha R9. And what a bike that has actually proven to be as well. It made its debut in the World Supersport Championship a couple of seasons ago now, and it sort of made its step over to the national championships, into the British paddock, and now, of course, here in EURO MOTO for 2026. And it's actually a very competitive machine. 3-cylinder engine it is compared to the 4-cylinder of the old Yamaha R6. And yeah, it makes things pretty interesting in terms of how the riders have had to adapt to that one.
Yeah, a couple of R6s still on the grid, but the R9s are definitely taking that mantle over now at the national levels of Supersport, as you said. Of course, Dirk Geiger on the Team Aprico Yamaha, that is an R9. Lennox Lehmann also on an R9. So two of them on the front row of the grid. The first of our Hondas is Julius Arenkiel Frelson, the Dane, in 5th position on the grid. And the first of our Kawasaki's Freddie Heinrich all the way down in 10th place. Certainly he and some of the other Weber Kawasaki representatives are going to want to get some strong points, but they're going to have to work their way up a bit.
Yeah, Kawasaki hasn't necessarily been at the fore of a Supersport Championship for quite a long time now. That ZX6R, quick machine, but in terms of Supersport race trim, the Yamahas and the Ducatis certainly seem to be outclassing it at the moment. But who knows, under racing conditions, maybe the circumstances will change as the riders, 18 of them, beg your pardon, make their way on to the grid for this one. And we'll see how it is all going to work out then here at the Sachsenring. Dirk Geiger on pole position, Daniel Blin and Lennox Lehmann alongside on that front row of the grid. Reigning champion Andreas Koffler, he's off onto pastures new for this year. So Geiger and Blin, the two highest riders in the championship notwithstanding that, the returning and attempting to battle for the title in 2026. Yesterday, it went the way of the pole, Daniel Blin. Can he convert that into 2 wins in 2 races? We'll wait to find out as we wait for the green flag to be waved at the back. It is all eyes on the lights. 15 laps of action for Supersport here at Sachsenring. Lights out, and we're underway. It's a great start of pole position for Geiger on board the Yamaha R9. Someone failing to get away pretty well at the back as we come down towards the first turn. Brenner there on the outside and trying to challenge for second position, but can't quite manage to make anything stick. But Geiger there with a great hole shot down into turn 1, Adam.
Yeah, I think that may have been Luca de Flischauer who didn't take the start there, at least at the first time of asking. Everybody else, though, clearly through the first few corners of the lap, and let's see if anybody can make a move in these early stages. Again, I do wonder quite how much tyre conservation there will be in the early phase of this race, but that's attacking body language to me at the front there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The case at this point is just try and get heat into the tyres and the brakes. Of course, on the opening lap, they're not going to be at the right sort of operating window. They've got to take some time to get those up to the right operating temperature. The best way to do that is to try and ride as fast as you possibly can. And for the likes of Dirk Geiger, who still leads as we come down through turn 11, the name of the game here is to try and build a gap over the rest of the field, over the likes of Marcel Brenner, Lennis Lehmann, and so on and so forth. Daniel Blin, etc., also in there, because he'll want to try and build out an advantage. Pretty similar to what we saw in the first Superbike race with Lukas Tulovic, who got a gap at the opening stages of it and then cleared off into the distance and was able to control his pace thereafter. I imagine a similar strategy here for his fellow German rider in Supersport.
I think so, yes. Interesting then that we've got 2 Aprico Yamahas being followed directly by both of the Automarket AF Racing Team Ducati Panigale twins. Daniel Blin down to 3rd position, Brenner retaining his 4th place. Marvin Siebdrath has made a little bit of headway on the first lap. He's running 5th position, but it looks like the second of the Yamahas falling into the clutches of the Ducatis. We've got the warning flag as well for slippery surface and a rider down. One would imagine those 2 are connected. That's one of the MCA Hondas. That could well be Julius Caesar Rurig.
Yeah, it is from 12th position by the looks of things for the German rider. That's not the way he'll have wanted to end the race, and that slippery surface flag, a warning there for all of the other riders out on track. So something for them to consider. Not that they seem to be heeding too much in the way of reducing their pace as it stands for now. So Geiger it is that leads them from his Aprico Yamaha teammate, or is that going to be before too long? Because Daniel Blin was having a look into the waterfall there. Wasn't quite able to make anything stick on board that Ducati, but his teammate there keeping a watching brief behind. And then Marvin Siebdrath on board the Honda CBR 600RR, bringing up the rear as it stands for now. But we end lap 2, Geiger clearing off into the distance out in front with a quartet of riders all very close together.
Yeah, ideal scenario for Geiger, isn't it, really, with his teammate, I think, inadvertently being the cork in the bottle and allowing his race-leading compatriot to make way. But it's not going to last long because the dam has been broken, and it's been broken by Daniel Blin. Blin on the Ducati, as in Superbike, in Supersport. The Ducati often very quick up the hill in a straight line here at Sachsenring, and Blin is up to P2.
Well, Blin now needs to try and get the magnets on and close the gap down to Dirk Geiger, who built out an advantage of 1.5 seconds at the end of the second lap. There is Geiger just going through the bottom of your picture. Now, Daniel Blin is going to have to really get a move on and try and close that gap down to the race leader. Of course, slightly fewer laps in Supersport compared to Superbike. We were 18 laps earlier for Superbike, just 15 laps here in Supersport. But of course, Blin won that race yesterday on board the Ducati Panigale V2. And if he can get himself close up to the back of Geiger, he might be able to launch an attack. Certainly that's what he'll be hoping for at this stage, but he needs to be careful that he doesn't fall back into the clutches of the trio of riders who are now sitting in his wheel tracks behind, because that'll cost him time and it could cost him an opportunity here now to challenge for the victory.
Just to correct the record and apologise to Julius Caesar Rurig. He is still up and he's in 12th position. It was actually Julius Ahrenkiel Frelsen, the other MCA Honda, the one that was 7th place across the line at the end of lap 1. That was the bike that was in the gravel on lap 2 of the race. So unfortunately for MCA Racing, their lead gunner aboard the Honda CBR 600RR was the rider off on lap number 2. That's going to be a disappointment for them.
So easy to do that when you're on cold tyres as well. Riders just pushing the limits a little bit too much, and unfortunately for Amrenkiel Frelson, they're going down the road, and the Dane ending his weekend in disappointing circumstances. Still that slippery surface flag out. I wonder if that might become a mainstay of this race here. We'll wait and see how that one proves to work out, but it's not exactly like you can't overtake through there. Not that that corner in particular is one for overtaking. It's just a warning for the riders to consider that the surface may be changing over the course of this race.
So a remarkable feat that we saw yesterday was a new Supersport lap record here at the Sachsenring of 24.7 from Lennox Lehmann, and Dirk Geiger has knocked it out of the park to claim a new Supersport lap record, a 124.428. We were away from this venue in 2025, and I think seeing the new bikes come in like the R9 Yamahas, we're seeing that ultimate pace of Supersport shift forward a little bit more in 2026.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Marvin Seegraaf there now just keeping a watching brief on the two Ducatis, or the Ducati rather, directly in front of him, and then the Yamaha, Brenner and Lehmann there respectively. Seegraaf here on the Honda CBR 600RR, which returned to competition a few years ago now, and that bike actually pretty handy depending on what trim it's in, but still needs probably a bit of development work to catch up to the likes of the Yamahas and indeed the Ducatis that are leading this race. However, Seegraaf's doing a good job of things out there at the moment on board the number 48. We'll see how he gets on over the remainder of this one. He's the 2022 IDM Supersport 300 Championship, so he's been in this paddock for a long time, has the German rider, and he's actually switching to that Honda after a couple of seasons on board a Yamaha. So there's not only the adaptation of learning, of course, a bigger class, but also learning a new motorcycle as well.
Yeah, exactly right. 28 years old now, the Swiss, and we'll see sorry, that's Seegraaf you're talking about. I was looking at Marcel Brenner's bio. I'm getting a little bit muddled. But the 48, yes, of Marvin Seegraaf, only 22. I give him a big disservice by crediting him with years beyond his own. Single race win in 2025 in the, as it was at the time, IDM Supersport. So I think he'll be keen to add to that tally in 2026. But as you said, it's quite a significant hurdle getting used to a new bike. Pretty much every manufacturer has some eccentricity to their bike, some quirk that anything else does not have, and there's always a bit of a gathering process, a working out exactly what's going on underneath you process.
Yeah, there's a lot of different intricacies, as you say there, Adam. You know, not only the different engine characteristics, but the frame, the chassis characteristics, working out how long or short you want to run the bike, the different setups that you've got to work out on. And if you've spent a couple of seasons on board a Yamaha, generally speaking, in the second of those years, you're going to understand the bike a lot better, but also you're going to have a base setup that you'd have gone to from the previous circuits. Now, of course, for Marvin Seegraaf, he's on a Honda. He won't have that reference point, and the Yamaha's setup changes will be very, very different. The base setup will be very different to that Honda, so that's something for him to have to consider, which might be why it could take him a couple of rounds to get up to speed. Sitting though in 5th place, not doing too badly on board the MCA Racing CBR 600RR. We'll keep an eye and keep on his rate of progression as we develop throughout this race.
Yeah, exactly. Looking further back in the field here, I believe that's Philip Feigl there, just ahead of the first of the Kawasaki's, just coming down the waterfall. So 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th in shot. So that's Lorenzo Felon on the first of the Kawasaki's, just behind Philip Feigl. Lorenzo Felon, born in 2005. If his dad was a motorcycle man, he certainly invested early in the Lorenzo name, and the best was firmly yet to come. I imagine he's a stockbroker too.
Well, quite, yeah. Let's see if we can get the lottery numbers on that one as well. So, 9th place there for Lorenzo Felon at the moment on board that Weber Racing Kawasaki. As we said, the Kawasaki, not the most fancy bike in this championship as it stands currently, but doing a good job out there on the fringes of the top 10. Some good points on offer, as I'm sure they'll continue to develop that machine. At the sharp end of this one, Geiger's increased his advantage up to 1.3 seconds over Daniel Blin. Blin there just in the bottom of your picture has cleared off into the distance, 2.5 seconds up the road now of this man, Lennox Lehmann, Marcel Brenner, and then also Marvin Seegraaf, who is just again keeping a watching brief. We're already now at the halfway stage of this race. Points down to 15th, just to remind you, in this one. And the question remains as to whether Blin can close that gap down further to Geiger. Last time around, Geiger was actually the quicker of the two riders. 1:24.896. Blin, a 1:25.122. There they are, just going through the bottom of your picture at the moment. And keen to see how this one is going to develop at the sharp end of this race and whether we will get a tussle for victory like we did here 24 hours ago.
Yeah, Philip Feigl on the older bike. That is one of the R6 Yamahas. So the previous iteration, as you said, the 4-cylinder versus the 3. And under pressure from Lorenzo Felon still. Lorenzo, who comes in after more of a tenure on non-production motorcycles in years gone by. Having a look to the inside here at the first corner, the easiest overtaking zone in some people's minds, and certainly Lorenzo Felon gets that one done nicely. Of course, he was in Moto 2, the European Moto 2 series, over the last 2 years, and 3 years on Moto 3 at World Championship level before that. So I think this is his very first, or at least one of his earliest races on a production-based motorcycle, and that's a new skill set all of itself.
Yeah, the bike's very different, as you say, from production over to what is classed as a production spec bike, prototype to a production. Prototype bike obviously will be a lot stiffer in terms of the chassis, in terms of the geometry and the way in which the bike is set up. And if you spent a lot of years on board a prototype-based bike and then switch to a production machine, actually it's an easier transition, generally speaking, than going from a production bike like one of these Supersport machines over to a prototype bike like a Moto 2 machine. That's inherently because the bikes, they're a bit less stiff, a bit more forgiving, and you can ride them in a different way. So that's generally speaking why you'll see riders who maybe switch from Moto 2 that haven't necessarily cut the mustard at the sharp end of the field, jumping onto a Supersport spec machine and then being able to fight a bit more competitively, because they're just able to understand the bike a bit more, and it's just that, as I say, a little bit more forgiving. Someone who's not going to be too forgiving at the moment, though, is the man in third position, I would imagine, Lennox Lehmann, because he's got Marcel Brenner right up his rear fairing at the moment, and Marvin Seedraft, again, they're still keeping a watching brief on proceedings. So we have now got 3 manufacturers battling for this final podium place, and it's starting to hot up as we enter this final third of the race now.
Yeah, it most certainly is starting to hot up at this stage. We've got some position changes a little bit further down the order as well. Peter Feigl has just moved up to 14th, but that's because Julius Caesar Ruhrig is now off the circuit. Second time lucky on me saying that. This time in the pit lane, unfortunately. So it's a race to forget for the MCA duo of Ruhrig and Frelson. They'll be hoping to bounce back next time out in Czechia with some better results, but this one has been a bit of a horrible weekend, unfortunately. A look here to the inside for third position. Marcel Brenner pressuring some more. Now, we saw last time by he was getting pretty close to the rear wheel of Lehmann on the way up to the first corner. I don't think he's quite got the run this time, though.
No, that Yamaha is really quite handy in a straight line, and actually the mid-range grunt of that 3-cylinder 900cc or so engine actually gives it good punch out of the corners. I would argue that the Ducati maybe has a little bit more in the way of top end, but it's a 2-cylinder bike, and again the power delivery very, very different. You can see there that Brenner not taking things lying down, he's backing that bike into the corners, certainly pushing the limits of the tyres, and again he's absolutely latched onto the back of Lennox Lehmann's Yamaha here as we come through this first sector. We flick it through that left-hander, and let's see if we can find any strengths or weaknesses between these two riders and the characteristics of the bike. Arguably, through these long downhill left-handers, you would argue that the Ducati looks to be able to keep a tighter line, certainly through there, and Lennox Lehmann just running slightly wide. And again, I wonder whether we're now starting to see a bit of tyre degradation coming through into this final stage of the race. That might be the factor that gives Marcel Brenner the impetus to attack here.
Could well be. Yep, Lennox Lehmann, who's already been fairly busy this year, of course. He was in the Le Mans 24 Hours Moto last month, I think on the verge of a top 10 with the Motorbox Kramer crew until an issue in the 22nd hour, and that cost them an hour, and they finished outside of the top 20 ultimately. So I'm sure that was a disappointment. One of his co-pilots for this for that race, the Le Mans 24-hour moto, will be in the Sportbike race later on as well. So a lot of big names from the endurance world doing their sprint competition with us in EURO MOTO this year. It was Max Stauffer who was with him on the Motorbox Crema machine, the Yamaha, at the 24 Hours Moto. There's a Yamaha of Lennox Lehmann then being pursued by Marcel Brenner, and I think that was a bit ambitious having looked to the inside quite there. Had to sit up and lean out of that one, didn't he, Marcel?
Yeah, you could see that Lehmann there was going through that right-hander, just ran it slightly wide actually, and the gap was kind of half there on the inside for Brenner. He was always going to have a look, but the gap was always going to disappear at the same time as well, and ultimately it just cost him a bit of time. He had to sit the bike up mid-corner, and then all of that grunt that he would have been trying to carry through the next series of bends, he had to back out of, and you can see what that's done for the second sector on the lap as it stands for now. And again, it means that Brenner has got all of that hard work to do all over again with just a few laps remaining come the end of this one.
Yeah, exactly. He's running out of time to bounce back towards the Yamaha. Will be 5 laps remaining, or 4 laps remaining, won't it, this time by, as the Dirk Geiger machine breaks the timing beam once again. He's easing slightly away from Blin. It's almost 2 seconds at 1.9 between them at this stage. Only 2/10 at the line, though, in this battle for third place. Podium then on the line. Marcel Brenner really following Lennox's wheel tracks here.
Yeah, looking pretty good on this battle for third place. Actually, as well, just on the bottom of the timing screen as well, is Filip Kučík. You were talking about him yesterday, Adam, when we were preparing for the race. Interesting story that German rider has on board the Yamaha R6 and how he sort of made that step over to motorcycles.
Yeah, exactly. The Oberheim native is turning 37 later this year, or later this month even, 21st of May. It's his first season in IDM Supersports, and he's been running around the national competitions for the last few years. He was third in the Alpe Adria 600cc's last year, but he only jumped onto a racing motorcycle for the first time in 2021, and I think he started with a 1000cc BMW, which is quite a way to get going. Before that, he was a KZ2 karter, and a champion one at the national level at that. So an interesting pathway for him. Certainly not one of the riders that's here to, climb the ranks to the top of Superbike and then maybe a tractor manufacturer for the World Championship. He's here for a bit of fun. He's off the pack at the moment, but I'm sure we'll see him improve later in the season, as we have a little bit of Kawasaki on Kawasaki action, and that is going to be Freddie Heinrich through into 9th position. Heinrich, who's new to Supersports as well. He was in Pro Superstock 1000s last year.
Yeah, made a step over to the Supersport class and smaller capacity machine, and again, working for him quite nicely here, but I wonder whether we're going to see Lorenzo Fellon attacking and retaliating down into turn 1. Side by side they go. Fellon with the inside line. Heinrich holds it around the outside. You can try and do that here because it's a long radius first corner, but Fellon's got the advantage. He has track position. You can see that Heinrich didn't want to give that one up at all, and this could be a nice little battle on the fringes of the top 10 to come through in the final couple of laps here of this race. Very exciting stuff and great racing between those two riders, giving absolutely no quarter on these ZX6Rs.
Yeah, both of them teammates as well, not only on Kawasaki's, but they're both under the Weber Motor umbrella, so they do need to mind their P's and Q's a little bit, I'm quite sure, otherwise dinner will be awkward all the same. A good little exchange between the two of them there, and I think that exchange might continue as this wears on. So it's going to be 2 to go this time by. Geiger being reeled in by Daniel Blin on the previous lap. The gap went from 1.9 to 1.0. I'm interested to see what it is as they come over the hill this time. It's down to a 10th.
It's significantly less. I wonder whether Geiger's made a mistake. Last time around, a 127.293, a 126.3 for Daniel Blin. So has Geiger run out of tyres? Did he make a mistake on that last lap? Either way, with 2 to go, it is now all out, fair and war for the battle for victory here between Geiger and Daniel Blin. This race, which we thought was pretty much sewn up from Geiger, given the pace that we saw from him in the first couple of stages of it, now it is not as sewn up as we thought, because Daniel Blin is all over the rear wheel of the race leader of Dirk Geiger, and you know that he's got the opportunity, he's got the desire now to try and challenge, and Geiger gets really out of shape as he comes through, and Blin takes the lead on board the Ducati to go through and hit the front for the first time here.
I think that's a Yamaha with a lack of grip on the front, and that is unfortunate for Dirk Geiger. You saw him there sitting up there, well, not quite mid-corner, but between the two corners, when normally you want to keep some lean angle going. And, well, unfortunately for Dirk Geiger, I think he's not really got the materials underneath him to retaliate. Was actually looking over the shoulder there. I wonder if it's the rear that's giving him the most cause for concern. Either way, I think an overall lack of Pirelli going on to this last lap.
Yeah, it's a strange one, that one, for Dirk Geiger. I wonder if it might be a more substantial technical problem than that, because you said the look over the shoulder is a cause for concern in itself. Let's have a look at the lap time then for Geiger as he comes across the line. 1:27.8. Blin was a 1:26.5 as we begin the last lap here at the Sachsenring. I just want to see the pace, the likes of Lemon and Brenner as well, as they're a couple of seconds down the road, and see what it is like relatively, because yeah, Geiger, he's about a second and a half off of that pace, which leads me to believe it's much more than just tyres. I wonder if he might have an issue with his quick shifter or auto blipper or something like that, and is not able to get the engine braking on the bike sorted, and maybe also on the upshift as well. That's why we saw him sitting up the bike. It could be tyre related, could be a combination and a factor of all of those, but for Geiger, something clearly not right on board that Yamaha to drop that pace so substantially in the closing stages of the race. It's very unusual.
Yeah, I know, you're quite right. Daniel then will be very, very happy with what's unfolded in this race. Daniel Blin, who was third in last year's IDM Supersport Championship, which has now evolved into the EURO MOTO Supersport. The man that he lost out to for second was Dirk Geiger. Now, with the champion moving on, those two are going to be the protagonists, I think, through the season. And in both races this weekend, Tom, it's been Blin to the fore.
What a race it has been for Daniel Blin then as he comes through into the final turn. He took victory by just 4/100ths of a second yesterday. He took the lead on the penultimate lap, and he will now come through to take the win, 2 in a row for Blin here at the Sachsenring. The Polish rider is on top in Supersport, ahead of Dirk Geiger, who sort of limps home into second position at the checkered flag, ahead of Lennox Lehman. So 2 Yamahas on the podium as well. Marcel Brenner, best of the rest, in 4th place. And, well, Daniel Blin, we saw that gap closing down to a second a few laps before the end, and then just 1 lap later it was down to a 1/10 of a second, significantly reduced there for Dirk Geiger. Hopefully we'll find out what happened to the German rider down in Parc Fermé after that one, but clearly all was not well for the number 60, and well, the upshot is it's 2 second places in 2 races for him, and it won't be the championship lead as we head into the next round in a couple of weeks' time.
And you could read the body language there between Blin and Geiger as they pulled up to next to each other. I think Daniel said what was going on there, and Dirk shrugged. I'm not sure he's any the wiser to exactly why there was that much pace drop-off. We'll have to see if we can glean anything from the interview, although it will be in Deutsche, obviously, and I'll do my best to try and decode a bit of it. I'm picking up some basic phrases, but I'm not quite there yet. So, an interesting setup going into the next round in the Supersport.
Well, the sun shines here at the Sachsenring then as Supersport comes to an end, and Daniel Blin takes what was an unlikely victory, 3.8 seconds ahead of Dirk Geiger at the checkered flag after Geiger fell into problems in the last few laps. Lennox Lehmann in third position ahead of Marcel Brenner, then Marvin Siebdrath. Luca de Verschauer in sixth position ahead of Philip Novosny in seventh. Then Philip Feigl, Lorenzo Fellon battling with his teammate Freddie Heinrich for the final places in the top 10. Jörg Erwig on his return to the championship finishes P11 ahead of Ulrich Schopek. Then it's Peter Feigl, Tilbe Tchaikovsky and Philip Kuchik completing the finishers. 3 DNFs in that race, Julius Caesar Ruhrig as well as his teammate Julius Amrenkiel Frelson and Marvin Krimes there on board the Krimes Racing Ducati, also not making the checkered flag. Well, the riders will be down in Parc Fermé. We'll be hearing from them in a couple of moments' time after a thrilling Supersport race, which culminated in an unlikely conclusion there, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely right. Culminatively across the last 3 laps of the race, Geiger dropped 6 seconds to Blin. Initially Blin behind and then surging past the team Aprico Yamaha, but all the same, that team can be delighted with a double podium, thanks to not just Geiger, but Lennox Lehmann as well. Marcel Brenner for 4th place as well in the AF Racing team, or on the AF Racing team, Ducati Panigale V2. So the 2 top teams, it seems, have been established early doors, but some promise as well, I'd say, from Marvin Siebdrath as well on the 48 with that 5th place finish. The MCA crew maybe having a bit of a suboptimal day in the office across the board, with 2 of their riders not taking the checkered flag. But I think Siebdrath looks like he's got some good performance and will be looking to better that 7th place that he had in last year's IDM standings.
Yeah, hopefully Siebdrath is able to achieve that goal as well. We'll see how he gets on. Good start to the weekend for him nonetheless, having lined up 6th on the grid to come through and finish inside those top 5 positions. Not bad at all for him on board that Honda CBR 600RR. And here is the number 28 making its way back into beg your pardon, number 26 making, no, it is a 28, it is, yeah, Lennox Lehmann's bike, isn't it, in 3rd position there on board that Yamaha. Then Daniel Blin's bike as well will also be in there. There is the man who led the race so long, or at least his motorcycle, the number 60 of Dirk Geiger, and such a disappointing end to the race for him. I think he'll be happy enough with 2nd place. I mean, there's a good haul of points in the championship, 18 in both races, but with the victory not quite within sight, but certainly having ridden so well, he'll be wondering exactly what went wrong and trying to, of course, prevent such an instance occurring in the future. Could have just been a freak technical problem for him. The tyres there, I mean, they're certainly looking worn. It is definitely a concern, but as I say, I wonder whether there was something a bit more substantial going on for that bike to have lost that amount of time in the closing stages of it. Is very unusual indeed, given the pace that was relatively consistent for him in the first stages of it. Yeah, either way, there is Daniel Blin's Ducati, and 2 wins in 2 races. He'll be very, very pleased with that.
A little bit of a mismatch going on there. A Mercedes dealer represented on that Ducati. Last I checked, Ducati was more closely affiliated with another German automotive manufacturer, but fair enough. The 26 bike then pulling up to the top step, or to the top position, the top parking space. On the subject of Geiger there, we took a look at that front tyre. I think there was a lot more graining, or not, there was more a pickup from the inlap there, I think, than graining. It caught my eye initially, and then with a couple of seconds let it swill in my mouth. I think that was more what he picked up on the inlap than anything, but all the same, something clearly amiss with that bike by the end of the race, and we'll do our best to try and figure that one out. Of course, Dirk is a rider who has been in this paddock now for a decade, because he was the champion in 2016 and 2017 in the Northern European Cup, which I believe at the time was on this bill, the Northern European Cup Moto 3s. So quite an incredible tenure that he's had here. I'm sure a lot of these people have known him since he was.
Unseren Mann
Very
auf P3, den habe ich schon vor mir. Ein Riesenapplaus für Lennox Lehmann. Erneutes Podium. Glücklich oder eher nicht so glücklich?
Nee, wir sind schon glücklich. Nach all dem, was letztes Jahr war, ist es schön, mit einem Doppelpodium in die Saison zu starten. Klar haben wir jetzt gemerkt, dass wir noch relativ viel Arbeit vor uns haben, um bei Blin und Dirk mitzufahren. Aber nee, freut mich hier zu Hause zweimal auf 3 zu stehen Und jetzt heißt es aber auch zurück an die Arbeit.
Danke, Lennox Lehmann. Herzlichen Glückwunsch auch für zweimal P3.
P3 for
Und sein
Lennox Lehmann,
Teamkollege, der
then
muss sich
second place
leider
though
mit
for Dirk Geiger.
zweimal
Let's find out what
P2
happened.
und 40 Punkten begnügen. Dirk, wichtigste Frage. Ich habe gerade kurz spioniert und ich habe es gesehen. Der Reifen ist einfach mal komplett platt.
Ja, ja, leider. Das Rennen lief eigentlich genauso wie geplant, in Anführungszeichen. Guten Start gemacht, die Pace ein bisschen gemacht, eine kleine Gap gemacht und dann wirklich versucht, ein bisschen den Reifen zu schonen, weil ich wusste, dass es dann am Schluss doch ein bisschen kritisch werden kann. Aber ja, dass es so extrem wird, hätte ich nicht erwartet. Da kam dann auf einmal aus dem Nix der Drop und da konnte ich dann gar nichts mehr machen. Ich habe da versucht, irgendwie noch ja, ein bisschen meinen Fahrstil anzupassen, aber das war dann eigentlich wirklich fast unmöglich, da auch noch gute Zeiten zu fahren und um Daniel ein bisschen hinter mir zu lassen. Aber ja, das ist jetzt so, zweimal P2 für den Saisonstart ist gut. Von daher die Punkte mitnehmen und beim nächsten Rennen nochmal Attacke.
Kühne Worte, Dirk Geiger, herzlichen Glückwunsch trotzdem für dich auch. Wenn
There
es
was
nicht
tyre problems
unbedingt das
then for
Ergebnis
Dirk
war, was
Geiger.
du dir
Disappointment
erhofft
then
hast.
for him on
Und für
board
den Mann
that
hier, der
Yamaha.
hat sich das
Let's catch
sicherlich
up though with
auch
the
so
race
nicht
winner.
träumen lassen.
Daniel
Sein
Blin,
Debüt,
2 wins
sein
in 2
Auftakt
races
hier am
here at the
Sachsenring
Sachsenring.
mit zweimal P1 und 50 Punkten. Riesenapplaus. Daniel Blin. $50 points goes to Poland.
Yes, I'm really happy. Dirk was super fast and I had a really hard time to get to him, but I think he killed the rear tire. So yeah, we are a bit lucky this time, but also we had a really nice pace. We did a good job between the races for the setup as well, so that's why my tire was also a bit better than yesterday, so I'm really happy. Thank you to Dirk for a good rivalry. Yeah, and see you next round.
Congrats, Daniel Blin. Für diese 50 Punkte muss man in aller Klarheit sagen, gutes Reifenmanagement, gutes Setup und das bringt dann den nötigen Erfolg.
So, rear
Und nach
tyre
diesen
problems then
Stimmen
for
zum Rennen
Dirk
kommen wir
Geiger.
natürlich jetzt hier zur
What a disappointment for the man who finished in second position, but what a great result though for Daniel Blin, winning the race for a second day in succession, now with 50 points in the championship after just 2 races.
Fangen an mit dem
2026, exactly what he
aus
wanted to do.
Deutschland fürs Team Apreco Yamaha mit der Startnummer
And now time for the,
28.
podium celebration
Macht mächtig
to begin
Lärm. Hier ist
here
der
at the
drittplatzierte
Sachsenring.
Lennox Lehmann.
I was
Lennox
somewhat
Lehmann.
waiting. Sorry, Tom.
No, carry on.
Lennox Lehmann then to the third step. I was somewhat waiting for Dirk Geiger to say the immortal phrase, the Reifen is kaput, but we didn't quite get there. Definitely a rear tyre problem though, as he said.
That's about the extent of my German, I must be honest with you. So, as he didn't say that, a bit tricky to work it out. Either way, Lennox Lehmann, 2 third places in as many days. The podium actually a repeat of what we had in race 1 here yesterday. Dirk Geiger, P2 for him after rear tyre troubles, costing him right at the very end of that race. Such a disappointment on board the Aprico Yamaha to have been within a hair's breadth of that victory. Either way, still some important points in the championship, and though it is of course only the opening weekend, it's all important to make as much ground as you can in these early stages of the season. And for this man here, Daniel Blin, that's exactly what he's done. 2 wins in 2 days. As he takes victory here at the Sachsenring. Let's see if this is going to be form that will be continued as we head into the next round of the championship. When we head over to the Czech Republic. Third place trophy there for Lennox Lehmann. Nice silverware for him to take back home. No, Geiger actually relatively happy in terms of the body language. Good smile on the face there, and congratulating all of the team.
Form des Sachsenrings für den Sieger für Daniel
But the winner,
Blin.
Daniel Blin, then takes the victory for the second day in a row here at the German circuit, and the Polish rider now leads the championship as we get ready for the national anthems. Well, that's our anthem of Poland plays out then for Daniel Blin, our winner here at the Sachsenring. Here's some highlights from Supersport. Well, there we are then, some highlights from the Supersport race here at the Sachsenring. What a fantastic place for a race, and of course Sportbike along the way in the not too distant future as well. Looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I certainly am actually. The composition of this grid does compel me in terms of the riders, because you've got some who've been in this paddock and in the de facto lightweight class for a number of years, going back to the Supersport 300s before they left the paddock in 2024, at the end of 2024. But you've got others who've come down from Supersport. You've got others who've come through Moto 3, or in a couple of cases even Superbikes as well. So a really interesting mix of levels of experience here, and I think it's going to create an interesting dynamic as the season goes on. Those who have not taken on Sportbike before, I think they'll come on song more and more as this season goes on.
Well, you can see the riders and the team members and personnel making their way onto the grid here at the Sachsenring. 24 hours ago, we saw Stefan Zuder taking victory from Tobias Kitzbichler and then Rupert Byman. The upshot is, though, that actually it was Jakob Rosenthaler who crossed the line in first position, but he was given a post-race penalty for exceeding track limits, running off the circuit. And the upshot is that he ended up, beg your pardon, it was an incident actually with the number 23 of Zuder actually on the race, and that's why he was given a long lap penalty, but it was given so late in the race it was replaced by a 3-second time penalty, and the upshot is that the Austrian rider was classified in 4th position when all was said and done. So it was a disappointing end to his race, and he lines up actually P4 here for this race this afternoon as well.
Yeah, Rosenthaler and Zuder came very close coming out of the final corner. Rosenthaler was trying to squeeze Zuder out, compromise that run up the hill towards turn 1, and he did so, but he did so in a way that almost took Zuder off. Zuder was at the very limit of the curb, on the drains, on the wider extremities of the runoff area, and did well to keep the bike upright. Rosenthaler, I think on reflection, probably didn't have much of an argument. He was trying to race in uncompromising fashion, certainly no intent, but pushing the envelope a little bit too far. And those two both very, very potent. I expect those to be among the fastest riders here, especially Stephan Zuder. Mentioned Supersport riders coming down to Sportbike. He was 5th in last year's IDM Supersport Series, which is the equivalent to the EURO
Ich bin
MOTO
hier gerade beim
Supersport
Jakob, der gestern, man muss es leider sagen, etwas Pech hatte, auch bestimmt ein bisschen unzufrieden bist über dieses Ergebnis, aber das ist alles Schnee von gestern, lieber Jakob, weil jetzt ist dein voller Fokus wahrscheinlich auf diesem Rennen.
Ja, genau, das gestern war natürlich extrem schade. Das erste Rennen gewinnen war extrem cool gewesen, aber ja, heute ist eine neue Chance, und ich glaube, dass ich gestern gesagt habe, dass ich sicher wieder um einen Sieg mitkämpfen kann, und definitiv werde. Ja.
Das hast du absolut gezeigt. Es war ein absolutes Highlight-Rennen, muss man sagen. So das allererste in diesem Jahr. Die Gruppe da vorne, die hat ja wirklich um nichts nachgegeben. Und schlussendlich, manchmal ist es so ein bisschen das i-Tüpfelchen des Ganzen und die Entscheidung aus der Rennleitung. Aber das ist natürlich etwas, da muss man einfach mal durch. Und deswegen, das stärkt einen nur als Fahrer, glaube ich, oder?
Ja, genau. Das gestrige Rennen war natürlich, wie glaube ich in alle anderen Klassen, viel managen, in Hinterreifen vor allem auf der linken Seite schauen, dass man vor allem in den letzten Runden halt noch möglichst viel über hat. wird sicher wieder ähnlich werden heute und ja, ich werde schauen, dass ich am Anfang wieder gleich nach vorne komme und schauen, was ich machen kann. Ja.
Jakob, einer der Österreicher, wir wünschen dir ganz, ganz viel Erfolg dabei und ich glaube, das wird eine ganz, ganz gute Kiste. Ich habe es im Gefühl.
Good to hear there from Jakob Rosenthaler. Lines up P4 after finishing in 4th. Well, actually, technically crossing the line in 1st position and then being classified in 4th place. We will hopefully hear from some other riders on the grid there as well. The front row occupied by Stefan Zuda with Tobias Kitzbichler and Rupert Biermann.
Jakob last year was kind of the wild car par excellence. I'm sure he's delighted to have a full season this year in the IDM Sportbikes. Looks like
we're Racing Team hier auf einer der 660er Aprilias und mit einem nicht unbekannten Gesicht auch für uns. Micky Winkler, schön, dass du am Start bist und diese Klasse auch noch, ich sag mal, mit deinem Talent auch befüllst. Gestern das Rennen war in Ordnung?
Ja, war auf jeden Fall in Ordnung. Ich sag mal, die Platzierung zeigt jetzt nicht ganz unseren Speed, weil von Rundenzeiten hätten wir vorne mitfahren können. Ja, erste Runde ein paar Probleme gehabt und dann zwischendrin nochmal einen Fehler eingebaut, aber der Speed ist auf jeden Fall da, das freut mich. Gerade hier tue ich mich im Normalfall immer ein bisschen schwerer. Aber ja, ich bin erstmal zufrieden und ich hoffe, es geht heute noch ein bisschen weiter nach vorne.
Ja, Sachsenring ist halt nicht Schleiz, Micky, das ist klar. Da sind ein paar Kilometer dazwischen und da muss man natürlich auch ein bisschen was dafür tun.
Das ist richtig. Das ist definitiv was ganz anderes als Schleiz.
Wir wünschen dir auf jeden Fall ganz viel Erfolg. Schön, dass du wieder mit von der Partie bist. Siehst toll aus. Tolles Motorrad, schönes Design. Viel Glück hier für das zweite Rennen.
Micky Winkler returning after a wrist injury from last season. Only got one round in of Sportbike in 2025. So keen to see what he's going to do. He's got a lot of form though. He's won the ZX4RR Cup and also finished 5th in the Supersport 300 Championship in this paddock back in 2021. So let's see how the 24-year-old will fare from the middle of the second row of the grid. He lines up P5 on board the Aprilia RS660, the second quickest of those machines. Directly in front of him actually is the quickest Aprilia, which is Tobias Kitzbichler. He lines up from the middle of the front row of the grid.
I enjoyed hearing there from Micky Winkler. He's a native of Schleiz, which of course is the home of the Schleiz-Drake road circuit, and made some comparisons there, I think, along with our reporter on the two circuits. Very different. Of course, Sachsenring has its roots in road circuit racing initially until 1990, but I think about 30 yards of the original route is still used at this point. The modern-day Sachsenring, very different indeed from the 20th century proposition of road racing. Of course, a former home of the East German Grand Prix in the 60s and 70s.
You really are a fountain of knowledge, and it never ceases to amaze me, I must say.
A fountain of research.
Ja, letztes Jahr noch die Vizemeisterschaft, second in the World Championship, the championship last year, but World Championship would be nice one day, huh?
Yeah, it's okay.
Is it the plan?
Yeah, for sure, it's the plan to go there, but we need to start somewhere.
You're such a cool dude, and actually last year was a tough year, actually also for the injuries, Ollie. This year also on the new bike, here on the Kawasaki, so is it a huge difference?
For sure, it's a huge difference from last year. Yeah, we struggle a bit with the speed on the bike. We do our best. As I showed yesterday, we can still be at the top, either that we have a bit to struggle with. The other riders have some more top speed than us. But in the end, we will not give up. We know what we're worth, and we can fight together as a team and show we still be here.
Actually, the speed, the top speed is probably a little different, but actually the lap time is not so huge.
No, the lap time's not so bad. I mean, in the race, I managed to do some good lap times, but on the straights, we have a huge problem by following the other riders in slipstream. But you know, I have been here a few years. I mostly know what I do, so I think this is a huge help for me to struggle with problems and learn how we can do this without doing any major change.
This is what we are looking for. All the best for your second race, Olli. Ja, da auch der Däne, der ein bisschen Probleme hat, halt den anderen zu folgen. Also da ist vielleicht ein kleiner Leistungsunterschied da. Die Jungs wissen noch nicht ganz genau, an welchen Faktoren sie da arbeiten können, werden das aber natürlich auch noch tun im Laufe der Saison. Aber der Grundspeed ist auf diesem neuen Fabrikat schon mal da.
Ollie Svensson there on board the ERC Kawasaki. That bike, of course, not necessarily the most favoured in terms of this paddock. And interestingly as well, a lot of the sport bike machinery is either a twin, a two-cylinder engine, or a three-cylinder in the case of the Triumph. But actually, the bike that Ollie Svensson is riding is a Kawasaki ZX6R. It's normally what you would see in the Supersport paddock, but it's actually been pegged back a little bit. So it's an inline four-cylinder machine. And because of the fact it's had to be pegged back, he said they're lacking a fair bit of straight line speed as a result of that. He's down in 12th position on the grid, is the 2024 Supersport 300 champion in the IDM class, as it was known back then. Finished 5th in the race, though, yesterday, and he'll be hoping for a similar ascension up the order here this afternoon.
And of course, in any form of racing, 2 wheels, 4 boats, doesn't really matter. It's a lot more beneficial to have
und zwar stehe ich jetzt gerade noch bei der Startnummer 18 hier ganz hinten, und der hatte gestern nämlich ganz spannenderweise auch noch seine Reifenwärmer selber draufgezogen. Das sah ganz wunderbar aus. Da sieht man mal halt einfach, wir nennen es in meinem Fachkreis Low-Budget Racing, aber was alles dafür getan wird, um hier an den Start zu gehen, das ist wirklich beeindruckend. Und damit gebe ich auch ab in die Werbung für dieses zweite Rennen der EURO MOTO Sportbike.
EURO MOTO Superbike action about to get underway here at the Sachsenring, the second race of the weekend. Stefan Zudo took victory yesterday from Tobias Kitzbichler and Ruben Byman. Byman, though, finishes the race in 3rd place and starts this one on pole position. Kitzbichler and Zuda alongside. Then you've got Jacob Rosenthaler, Mickey Winkler and Mika Siebdrath on the 2nd row. Alexander Weissel on row 3 ahead of Lewis Ramstorfer, and then Keanu Vaya in 9th position. Then row 4 is Tom Quill with Julian Van Kalkeren and Oliver Svensson, who we heard from on the grid a few moments ago on board the Kawasaki. Then you've got another Kawasaki on row 5. That is Sasha De Wits on board the ZX6R, and he's got the Polish rider Maximilian Palmowski with Ty Henriksen for company. Next up is Jules Burcot, the Frenchman, with Max Stauffer and JJ Den Hood in the 6th row on the outside in 18th position. Magnus Christoffersen and Lucas Sorensen, who we just saw a couple of moments ago, right at the back. The Danish rider on board the Aprilia RS660 will line up at the rear of the field. It'll be a 13-lapper, this one here, Adam, and yesterday, again, we saw really exciting racing action. The upshot was, though, that the man who crossed the line in 1st place was classified in 4th after the 3-second penalty following an incident that he had with Stefan Zuda in the closing stages of the race. Can he get redemption, though, here this afternoon? What do you reckon?
I certainly think that he has the pace, yes. I think that the riding that we saw out of him and the performance we're seeing out of the Triumphs across the board would suggest to me that Rosenthaler will be right up there and fighting. Ruben Byman on pole position, fascinating to me that. He was runner-up in the 2024 SSP 300s, the kind of precursor to the Sportbike Championship that took over last year. He was 12th in last year's Sportbike standings and is now a front runner seemingly this year by the looks of it. Contrast that to the 2024 SSP 300 champion, Oliver Svensson. He was runner-up last year in this championship, now aboard the Kawasaki, starting only in 12th place. I think that kind of shows you just how competitive this grid, just how thin the margins are between being a front runner and being in the midfield. And 2 riders of about, I would say, equal skill level have both struggled over the last 2 years. But let's see if Svensson can do a salvage job there from P12. A long way to go this season, a lot of learning to do with the Ninja, and let's see how this race unfolds.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting one, this one, as the riders make their way through the penultimate corner and then through the final turn. couple of laps shorter this race compared to the Supersport race we had a few minutes ago. 13 laps here for the riders to contend with as they make their way on to the grid. Byman on pole position with Tobias Kitzbichler and Stephan Zuder, yesterday's race winner, on the outside of that front row. So he'll have the inside line in theory going down to the first corner, but will he be able to challenge for the lead? It all depends on how good the start is going to be for the rider on board the Triumph Daytona 660. 2 triumphs on that front row in courtesy of Byman and Stephan Zuder, with an Aprilia of Tobias Kitzbichler in the middle of the 2 riders. There's your second row. Jacob Rosenthaler in 4th place with Mickey Winkler and Mika Siebdrath alongside on row 2, and then row 3, as we say, Alexander Weissel, Lewis Ramstorfer and Keanu Vaya. Green flag is at the back, red lights are on. Long hold, lights around, and we're underway then. Let's see how they get away as we come down towards turn 1. Stephan Zuder with a good start on the inside. He drags alongside and gets the whole shot as we come down into the first corner then. Kitzbichler trying to challenge and look, though, on the inside. That's Jacob Rosenthaler, the man who crossed the line in first place but was classified in 4th. He's up through from the second row into second place by turn 2.
Yeah, that's an impressive start from Rosenthaler. Some good starts as well. I think that was Tom Keel, actually, the 10th place starter right up there as well. So the Triumphs in general seem to have had a very, very good start compared to just about everything out there. It is, though, last evening's winner, Stephan Zuder, at the front of the field as they cross the first timing beam. And you know what? I'm not convinced that that isn't the 55 bike in second place.
No, you're spot on. That is Tom Keel, who's come through from 10th place. They're teammates, both on the RT Motorsports Triumph Daytonas. They caught me completely by surprise. So to come from 10th up into second position by the first corner is an absolutely phenomenal start. I hope we get a replay and work out exactly how Tom was able to do that. But that is an amazing launch for the Dutchman from that far back on the grid. Either way, Stephan Zuder leads now from the 2 RT Motorsports Triumphs of the 55 of Tom Keel, followed by Jacob Rosenthaler, who's there in 3rd position. We come round the final corner and across the timing line, and let's see how the rest of the field is all going to shape out then. So Zuder is the lead from the 55 of Tom Keel. Then you've got Rosenthaler. In fact, Rosenthaler's up into second place now at the expense of his teammate. Tobias Kitzbichler's going through, and Ruben Byman for 4th position as we head into turn 1 and gets the move done. It's all pretty even Stevens at the sharp end of this one, and no big gaps being formed, unlike what we've seen in Supersport and Superbike so far at the sharp end of this race.
No, well, it's not quite the same style of racing that we used to see in the Supersport 300s, is it? But they do seem to be a little bit more inclined to have a pack, a peloton, than the Supersports or the Superbikes, these sport bike machines. Zuder then leading the way from Rosenthaler, which is a carbon copy of what we saw for much of yesterday's race. So that battle looks like it could re-engage. But for Tom Keel, on the 55, I mean, I must say, sometimes if things look too good to be true, they often are. 10th to 2nd, just on launch. I'm certainly sure that the race control will be looking.
Yeah, or keep an eye on the timing screen to see whether there was a jump start there, because, as you say, he got away like he'd left the gas on. You got nearly 3 abreast as we come down into the left-hander. Rupert Byman there on the inside of Keel and gets the move done for 3rd position. Kitzbichler just keeping a watching brief on board his Aprilia RS660 there as well. As we end lap 2, though, and begin lap 3, the sharp end of this one is still led by Stephan Zuder, followed by Jacob Rosenthaler there in 2nd position as we come across the timing line. So Kitzbichler, where is he now? He's up into 3rd place. And then you've got Keel versus Byman in the battle for 4th and 5th position here, respectively, both on board those Triumph Daytona 660.
Yeah, it doesn't quite look like Keel has the outright pace in this early phase of the race, even with that lightning fast launch. Ruben Byman behind him in 5th position will be fuming, I'm sure, that he's not converted that opportunity from pole position into a strong start. Zuder and Rosenthaler, conversely, will be happy to see that the gap is out between them and the chasing pack. Can Kitzbichler do anything to join them there aboard the Aprilia? Certainly for his Poika and Strub team, and indeed himself, he will want to get that Aprilia in there up amongst the Triumphs that are 1-2. He's the only non-Triumph in the top 8 as of the last time crossed the line.
Yeah, Zuda and Rosenthaler need to be clever here. They've got to try and work together in this opening stage of the race and basically carry each other along, try and use each other's slipstream, use the pace, rather than battling and fighting corner by corner. Whilst it's entertaining for us here commentating on it, they've got to be careful, because if you start fighting, you bring yourself right back into the pack of the likes of Kitzbichler and Quill, who will be there ready to pounce and take advantage of it. So these two just need to run their own race as it stands for now and try and set some quick lap times in the opening stages, give themselves that buffer. Then when we get into sort of the final third of it, then they can start roughing each other up, and then we can start seeing some battles amongst one another. Zuda it is that still leads. Rosenthaler there sitting in second place. Kitzbichler holds on to P3, and Byman has gotten ahead of Tom Quill for fourth place then. So that strong start for Quill. Whether it's a jump start or not, we've still not heard anything. It's just come up on our timing screen. Number 55, long lap penalty for Tom Quill. It was a jump start. It was too good to be true. 10th to second down to the first corner. Was always going to be an over-optimistic start to the race. And the upshot is that the Dutchman does have a double long lap penalty, and he will go tumbling down the order as a result.
Yeah, it's going to cost him, what, half dozen seconds there or thereabouts. So he's going to fall back outside of the top 10 after all of that, I reckon. And that's going to be a bitter disappointment. We watch on then as the top two streak away. I think to some extent Rosenthaler is working with Zuda here. I don't think the Austrian is inclined to make a move at this juncture. I don't think the same though is for Ruben Byman. Byman with a decent run there down the waterfall, looking to the outside, but gets his nose cut off there by Kitzbichler a little bit. And equally, Tom Quill was under pressure from Mika Siebdrath. That said, Tom, of course, is likely heading to the long lap penalty very soon.
Yeah, let's see whether he comes in this time around. We're just going to cut away from that camera angle there very briefly, but we'll notice if he goes tumbling down the timing screens there for the number 55 as we come across the timing line then. So still as you were at the sharp end, or is it? Because look at that, the number 78 of Rosenthaler trying to challenge against the 23 of Zuda coming down into turn 1. Lap 5 out of 13, so we're already getting close enough to the halfway stage of this race. These top two again have built out a nice comfortable buffer over the rest of the field. Last time around they were in the mid 1 minute 28. Compare that to the likes of Kitzbichler and Byman, who were in the low 1:29. So despite the fact that the top two are trying to squabble for the race lead and probably will be starting to launch some attacking moves in the next few laps, at the moment they're setting good pace and just again building that buffer out as we expected, up to about 2 seconds or so last time across the line.
Yeah, Stephan Zuda, I feel this year has really got the focus in his eyes. A product of the Northern Talent Cup going back about 5 years, where he finished 11th in the standings. He suffered immensely with injuries through about 2022 through 2024. Lots of part seasons, lots of struggles, lots of arm pump from what I understand. And so now in this very competitive environment that he's in with the Freudenberg team on that triumph, he's looking to make good on the promise that he's shown in the past, and that is exactly what we're seeing from him at this juncture of the race at the very least.
Across the timeline we go in this battle for third place between Kitzbichler and Ruben Byman. Then the 22-year-old Ruben Byman chasing down Kitzbichler for that final place on the podium. You can see some shapes being made here by Rosenthaler as well, as he again launches a bit of an attack half to the inside, then switches to the outside line coming through turn 1. I think at the moment here, Adam, he's just trying to assess the weaknesses by the looks of things of Zuda. Just try and see where he can be a bit stronger, maybe a bit later on the brakes, and try and send one through on the inside. Sort of dress rehearsal, if you like, for this sort of final third of the race as we get ready to head towards it.
Yeah, exactly. He's got the luxury that we've seen some other riders in other categories not have, and that's some clear road behind him, so he can kind of pre-game what he might do in the last phase of the race. It's always so useful to have that cushion, as Rosenthaler has behind him, because of course you're not having to think about what's over the shoulder.
No, well, it's working out quite nicely for the number 23 here so far. Wild card in the World Supersport class at Most as well, and finished 5th in the IDM Supersport Championship in 2025, did Stephan Zuda. Has a history of those arm pump injuries, and now Rosenthaler goes to his inside as we come down into the penultimate corner and does take the lead of the race away from Stephan Zuda. But how long will that be for? You can imagine that Zuda is now going to be the rider who goes from defending to attacking and will be on the attack before too long. Out of the final corner, good drive out of here will help Zuda's cause, and let's see whether he can launch a retaliation as we come across the timing line. Let's take a look at the move though once again. Good run run through the exit of the waterfall there for Rosenthaler. He goes through on Zuda's race lead, but Zuda is attacking down into turn 1. He's got the inside line, and now he's got the race lead back.
Felt somewhat inevitable, that, didn't it? That after that run out of the final corner, that Zuda would be right there with Rosenthaler by the time they emerged at the first corner. Ruben Byman then was through into third place at the line, but I'm not convinced that Kitzbühel didn't get back through there into third position. Maybe Byman is still there. Either way, they are running very close quarters, and Byman is still ahead for third position. So the Freudenberg Rohrer Palago Racing triumph remains in third for the time being. Oliver Svensson up to 8th position, so he's made up some places on that Kawasaki in 8th place, but again, struggling a lot with straight line speed and pickup and traction out of corners, speed down the straights. It's a lot easier to race with that than quickness through the corners. Down the waterfall, though, goes the 78 machine. What a move from Rosenthaler. 2 laps in a row now we've seen that from him. Can Zuda retaliate in the same way he did a lap ago, Tom?
Yeah, phenomenal stuff then from Rosenthaler. Gets that move done, but it doesn't leave him vulnerable as we come out of the final corner and across the timeline. Will we see what we saw last time with Stephan Zuda attacking against Rosenthaler? Across the line we go, down into the first turn. Don't think he's quite close enough to launch an attack at the moment, so Rosenthaler's exit was clearly a little bit stronger than it was a lap ago. Does he run it a bit deep on the brakes? No, hooks it up quite nicely through that Coca-Cola curve and manages to get the bike facing in the right direction and running the lines, crucially, that he wants to be able to run. As we're coming towards the end of the race, and this is the time where the tyres are now going to start to get a little bit more worn. The riders are going to be having to adapt them corner by corner, lap after lap, and maybe not take as much risk as they were able to in the opening stages of it, just by a factor of them having worn down a little bit. These sport bikes, they're not quite as powerful as some of the super sports, and certainly nowhere near as powerful as the superbike machines, but they do suffer from a bit of tyre wear, and that is a factor that will need to be considered. Through the left-hander we go, nose to tail between your top two. Rupert Byman and Tobias Kitzbühel as well, still pretty close for company. This is where we saw the lead changing last time around between Rosenthaler and Zuda. Rosenthaler on this occasion is in front of Zuda, isn't he? So he's not going to be worrying too much about any attacks from behind, but is Zuda going to try and attack into the penultimate turn and repay the favour on Rosenthaler? He is, and goes through for the lead once more.
I think this is going to be a game of... Oh, we've got the 25 down, so that's the sister Kawasaki, Jules Burkott. Yeah, the ERC bike, sister machine to Oliver Svensson. That's a shame. I think that was down in the middle sector. But yes, I think it's going to be a game of musical chairs here at the front, because here comes Rosenthaler to the fore again on the RT Motorsports Triumph, takes the lead back. I guarantee you that's going to switch again before the end of the lap.
Yeah, they've got to be careful here that they've not gone too early, really, with this battle, because, again, whilst it's entertaining, it's just bringing them back into the likes of Byman and Kitzbühel. To that end, the gap now down to, 1.2 seconds across the timeline between the top two, and then the riders in third and fourth place of Byman and Kitzbühel. And the problem is, if they keep squabbling like that, there's still 4 laps now remaining, actually, of this one at the moment. So there's a good opportunity, a good window for these riders to close up, and they go from battling in the final podium places to being a part of this lead squabble for victory.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to see, Tom. They were a lion's share of a second slower than Ruben Byman and Tobias Kitzbühel last time across the line. Rosenthaler, I think, is under pressure again now from Zuda, as they're rather the opposite way round. Rosenthaler under pressure from Zuda as they run down to the waterfall, but Byman is leading the charge towards the rear wheel of the second place man.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a case of when and not if they're going to start closing up and, again, joining that party, really, because, as you say, Byman and Kitzbühel, they've not been knocking 7 bells out of each other over the last couple of laps like we've seen with the top two. And as they come across the line, the gap now down to just over half a second or so. Down the start-finish straight we go. Zuda to the inside of Rosenthaler. Has he got the move done? He's got the inside line, he's got track position, and he does indeed have the place. Sits up Rosenthaler through that first corner, forces him to take the wider line, less speed through that turn. And the upshot is that now the number 23, the man who started this race from third on the grid but won race 1 yesterday, is now back in front
Yeah, but for how much longer, and how much longer is Rosenthaler going to be able to attack uncompromisingly with clean conscience? I think very soon Byman will be there with him, and if anything, Zuda looks like he's really escaped the blocks on this lap. He's not going to be under pressure into the waterfall unless he makes an error here through the last of this long sweeping left-hand section of the circuit. And yeah, Zuda a little bit clear, not quite out of slipstream range, but certainly out of the window of attack for the time being. I think Rosenthaler is going to be under pressure from Byman very soon, though.
Well, Zuda has to do that. He's got no choice. His hand's been forced now as a legacy of the fact that Byman and Kitzbichler would have been closing up. You'd have seen the pit boards across the start-finish straight. The team would have been notifying them that, look, the gap's closing down. Get a move on. If you don't get a move on, you're going to go from possibly challenging for the victory to finishing off of the podium. So Rosenthaler and Zuda, they need to get the hurry up along here. Zuda has taken action with that as he comes across the timing line. The gap's still about 0.3 of a second or so. It sort of ebbed and flowed over the course of that lap. The upshot is it ended with only a few tenths of a second, but it's at far enough of a distance in front for Rosenthaler to not lob one up the inside going down into turn one. And the upshot is that they just run in clean air, and it stops that attack from Byman and Kitzbichler from behind.
Further back in the field, I think Mickey Winkler may have made a bit of an error on the WSC Aprilia. He's dropped from 8th to 10th on that lap, with Julian Van Kalkeren and Sasha de Witz profiting. So the second of the Aprilia runners in the order with a little bit of a hiccup. Let's see if he can maybe get back up and reclaim those points in the last couple of laps of the race.
Yeah, some good battles going on further down the order. The likes of Tom Kiel and Alexander Weissel are close together in 11th and 12th place respectively. Last points finisher at the moment is Max Stauffer on board the Aprico Yamaha R7. Not the most favoured bike in this paddock at the moment is that machine. Certainly in Sportbike, it's not the quickest of the bikes we've seen out there, but he's involved in a nice battle with Ty Henriksen's Aprilia RS 660, rather, I beg your pardon. So the Aussie currently holding on to that final points position as it stands for now.
Looked to me like Byman and Kitzbichler there were very close at the top of the waterfall. Is Kitzbichler even through? We'll have to have a look as they come across the line next time by. Zuda clearly still at the front of the field for the time being, and it is Byman still there in third place, but he's under quite a bit of pressure now from Kitzbichler as we see the side-by-side on there with Svensson and Rammersdorfer as well. None of us know quite where to look.
Now, that was a good battle going on for ninth place there between Winkler and Sasha de Witz into that final turn in the final positions of the top 10. So penultimate lap we're on now here then, and Zuda looks like he's timed this one quite well because he's built out that advantage of about 0.3 of a second. Not a massive margin, but in Sportbike it can prove to be that difference between being involved in a battle for the lead actively and just giving yourself that bit of breathing room, which is exactly what the Czech rider has done so well here. Rosenthaler there just doesn't look to have a response to him at the moment, and he needs to hope for a mistake from the race leader in order to challenge for the victory.
I dare suggest that Byman is a little bit frustrated right now because Kitzbichler's been more on the offensive over the course of the last lap and a half, 2 laps or so, and that's really allowed Rosenthaler, who looked like he might be under pressure from second, to now move himself out of harm's way there. And if anything, Byman might be under pressure for third place here. Kitzbichler looking to the inside, not quite close enough to scythe to the apex of the corner first, but he's challenging hard. Rosenthaler looks like he's closing in slightly here in the last phase of the lap. That seems to be where Rosenthaler is a little bit stronger than Zuda. It seems to extend out through the first 2 sectors and then close back in the final.
So across the line we go then. One more lap to go. Fastest final sector actually from Rosenthaler, the Austrian rider then. So he is certainly getting the hurry up, and he's got one more opportunity, one more lap to go in order to challenge for the victory against Stephan Zuda. Rosenthaler, of course, lost the win here 24 hours ago to Stephan Zuda after they had a bit of a coming together in the final stages of the race. He'll love to right those wrongs, and now what he needs to do is, again, exactly what he's doing in these first few corners, close that deficit down and launch an attack, I'm sure, into the final sector.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's see if Rosenthaler can do it then. He's got half a lap between himself and the checkered flag, but he's got Stephan Zuda between himself and the first position. Zuda, yesterday's winner, inherited, of course, as you alluded to, from Rosenthaler after the penalty caused by the two of them coming together. I don't think Zuda's going to give him the opportunity to get close enough for a move unless there's a very special run down here through the waterfall for Rosenthaler. I think Zuda's just about got it.
Yeah, Zuda rode really well in that second sector in particular to just give himself a tenth of a second or so, but Rosenthaler is closing up. There's one more corner to go here in EURO MOTO Sportbike. Who's going to win this one then between Zuda and Rosenthaler? Has Zuda got the line covered? Has he got enough track position? He has. Through the final turn we go. We blasted to the checkered flag. It's 2 wins in 2 races for Stephan Zuda then here at the Sachsenring. He wins it ahead of Jacob Rosenthaler and Tobias Kitzbichler completing the podium finishes, but a phenomenal end to that race. Great tension right down to the checkered flag, and the upshot is the triumph of Stephan Zuda wins his second race in succession here.
Perfect start for him then in the EURO MOTO Sportbikes, having been competitive last year in the IDM Supersport Championship. But what about Kitzbichler there on the last lap, getting himself the podium? Byman went into the final lap on the podium. He ends up in 4th place, not what the pole sitter would have been envisioning on that pre-grid less than 20 minutes ago.
No doubt about it. So, yeah, Ruben Byman finishes off the podium in 4th place. He was 3rd here yesterday, and sadly it's not the second visit to the rostrum in as many days for the Dutch rider. But Stephan Zuda, what a great end to that race for him. That was a real masterclass of precision and patience over the course of that race. We saw him getting involved in that battle with Jacob Rosenthaler, and I actually questioned it, didn't I? I wondered if he'd gone in a little bit too soon, but actually he timed it really, really well. Rosenthaler closed up in the last lap or so to be within a tenth of a second at the checkered flag, but ultimately it wasn't enough for a serious attack on that race lead coming down into this penultimate turn. Riders then making their way back into the pit lane. Podium on the way. Well, what a race we had here in Sportbike for EURO MOTO, and the upshot is that Stephan Zuda, the Czech rider, makes it 2 wins in 2 days. Jacob Rosenthaler, the Austrian, gave it as good as he got, but ultimately it wasn't quite enough to depose the number 23 at the checkered flag. Tobias Kitzbichler, though, shout out to him, 3rd place, getting the better of the pole sitter Rupert Byman right in the closing stages of that race. They were ahead of Mika Siebdorf, Lewis Ramstorfer ahead of Oliver Svensson, who came through from 12th on the grid to finish P7, Van Kalkeren in 8th, Mickey Winkler in 9th, Sasha Davits completing the top 10. And a great ride also for Keanu Vire there down in 13th. He's the nephew of Colin Vire, who races in Moto 2. He finished P13 inside the points ahead of JJ Den Hoorn and Maximilian Palmowski, the Polish rider, completing the points finishes. Well, podium celebrations will be on the way in a couple of moments' time. Looking forward to that one. That was a fantastic race there, Adam. I really, really enjoyed the action we saw at the sharp end of the field in particular.
Yeah, no, we didn't really get to see much outside of the top of the order, but that's always the sign you've got a competitive race for the important positions. And this Sportbike grid, just studying it in the days and hours before this first weekend, I got the feeling that this was going to be an interesting one with quite the pick and mix variety of different rider backgrounds, what they've done in the last 3 or 4 years. They've all kind of taken, largely at least, taken quite different paths to this season in the EURO MOTO Sportbikes. And yeah, I think we're going to have a really compelling year. Stephan Zuda has certainly established himself as the early favourite, though.
Yeah, good start to life for Stefan Zuda then, on board the number 23 Triumph. Just 20 years old he is, and he's had a history of arm pump injuries. No such bother though in that race by the looks of things. He'll be wildcarding in the Sportbike class at Most as well in the World Superbike Championship later on this season. So we'll see how he gets on at that one. As you said, finished 5th in the IDM Supersport Championship last year as well. And great job from Tobias Kitzbichler, the Austrian rider. 8th in the Northern Talent Cup here last year, made the step over to the EURO MOTO Superbike Championship for this season, so moved his way over from a prototype Honda NSF 250R machine, single cylinder bike, a very stiff chassis on that, to a more forgiving chassis in terms of the Aprilia RS660, but a completely different kettle of fish to ride these machines as well. Different engine, of course, being a 2-cylinder twin, and also the chassis being different, the suspension being different, so a big uphill task for Tobias Kitzbichler, but really proving the talent of the young Austrian rider. Just 16 years of age he is, and I'm sure that is the sign of things to come. He could be a very big threat as this season develops, and his riding, I'm sure, will only get stronger as a result of the experience that he'll gain.
I imagine that Jakob Rosenthaler is a very comfortable man this year. Last year he was pretty much solely relying on wildcard appearances in Moto3 World Championship, then World Supersport 300s as well. At many points last year not quite knowing where the next ride was going to come from. And so this year having a full season berth here in the Sportbike series with RT Motorsports, I imagine he can ride with a much clearer head and a much greater degree of confidence, because yes, if you're wildcarding, you want to have a good showing, but you also don't want to throw your bike down to the gravel.
Yeah, it's all about finding that right balance, isn't it, really? And yeah, did a good job there, did Jakob Rosenthaler. As I say, a little bit disappointed for him yesterday to finish in 4th position after coming across the line in the lead, but P2 for him here this afternoon will be something for him to smile about as we head into the next round of the championship in the Czech Republic in a couple of weeks' time. We'll be hearing, though, from the podium finishers down there in Parc Fermé in the not-too-distant future. A great crowd we've had here at the Sachsenring as well. They've really been treated to some fantastic racing. Action aplenty in all of the classes that we've covered here today, in Superbikes, in Supersport, and of course here now just in Sportbike as well. The second Superbike race along the way in a couple of minutes' time.
Und wir machen natürlich da weiter, wo wir aufgehört haben mit unseren Interviews. Und da bitte ich einmal für den P3 einmal nach vorne Tobi Kitzbichler. Riesenapplaus für dich. Tobi, du bringst die Proika Streb Aprilia schön wieder aufs Podium.
Es war so ein schweres Rennen. Die Rundenzeiten waren am Anfang brutal schnell. Die ersten 2 sind noch angehauen. Da habe ich gewusst, dass ich noch mit meinen Hinterreifen nicht mehr Viecher kriege. Dann hat mich einer überholt. An den habe ich mich noch zugeschmissen. Der hat eigentlich noch die Luken fast aufgeschlossen. Ja, nachher sind wir wieder ein bisschen angerissen und ich habe gewusst, dass ich nicht mehr zu den ersten 2 Viecher kriege. Dann habe ich einen 3. studiert, so lange bis zur letzten Runde, und nachher habe ich mir einen geschnappt, Wasserfall habe.
Das hast du ganz wunderbar gemacht. Wir gratulieren dir dafür, sehen uns gleich auf dem Podium. Tolle 16 Punkte. Danke einmal an Tobi. Und für die nächsten Rennen nehmen wir uns auf jeden Fall vor, noch mal einen Übersetzer mitzunehmen, den wir
second place finisher though, Jakob Rosenthaler.
Für diesen hardcore schönen Akzent. Ja, und akzentfrei ist der Mann jetzt auch nicht, der nach vorne kommt. Und zwar mein Herr Rosenthaler, kommen Sie doch mal bitte endlich aufs Podium. Jakob, gestern etwas Pech gehabt. Wir haben schon im Grid darüber gesprochen. Heute hast du es jetzt endlich aufs Podium gepackt.
Ja, es war ein extrem intensives Rennen. Die Anfangsphase war, wie schon erwähnt, extrem schnell. Es war ja so ein Abwägen, wie viel riskiert man am Anfang, weil es war klar, dass der Reifen zum Schluss gar wird. So ist dann auch geworden. Wir haben, glaube ich, beide Riesenprobleme gehabt. Nur mehr in der ewig langen Linkskurve, nur mehr quer gegangen. Aber ja, zum Schluss ist es leider knapp nicht ausgegangen, aber ich freue mich auf jeden Fall über das erste Podium. Ja.
Das kannst du auch. Herzlichen Glückwunsch auch für dieses tolle Rennen und für diesen 2. Platz. Jakob Rosenthaler, vielen Dank.
Jakob Rosenthaler, 19 years of age, and a podium finish for him here today. Very well done.
Und Doppelpodium, Doppelplatz 1, 50 Punkte hier in der EURO MOTO Sportbike. Der Mann aus Tschechien und damit auch herzlichen Glückwunsch von unserem Broadcast-Team, was ebenfalls aus Tschechien kommt. Stephan Kraus
here at Sachsenring.
This is joyness. This is happiness at all, isn't it?
It is. I think it was much tougher race than yesterday with much higher pace. I am very happy because the bike was working much better than yesterday. We did some big steps in the warm-up that helped me to gain the pace and have the pace throughout the whole race, even with the worst rear tire during the end of the race. So I am pretty happy. I just want to thank to my team because they were supporting me the whole weekend. We did very well, and I'm very happy that I can share the result with them. So thanks to everyone at home, everyone who's watching, and to all my sponsors making this possible.
Congrats, Stephan Suda, für diese 50 Punkte und einen brillanten Auftrag.
Stephan Suda
hier am
takes victory here on the Triumph Daytona. 660 for his second win of the season. 50 points in the championship now, giving him a perfect start to 2026. Exactly what he wanted to do. And now time for the podium celebrations to begin here.
Zweimal Triumph, einmal Aprilia, zweimal Österreich, einmal Tschechien. Und damit kommen wir
making their way onto the rostrum in a couple of moments' time.
Podium gestanden, heute wieder geklappt vom Viva bei Polkers und
all smiles, I think, on this one, Tom.
No doubt about it.
Aus
Not the
Österreich,
surprise that we saw in Parc Fermé yesterday.
Tobias Kitzbichler.
Tobias Kitzbichler finishes P3 on board his Aprilia RF 660, the Viva by Pulka and
Machen wir weiter mit
Street
dem
machine
nächsten Österreicher.
on the rostrum after starting second on the grid here today.
Motorsportsteam. Die Startnummer 78. Euer Applaus für Jakob Rosenthaler.
Second place for Jakob Rosenthaler. After the disappointment of yesterday, he really did turn his fortunes around.
Und der Doppelsieger
Finished
hier
P2,
beim
getting himself some crucial points at this early phase of the championship.
Freudenberg, Rohrer, Paligo
But
Racing.
the winner, Stephan Suda. What a performance from him. What a calm head on young
Hier ist der
shoulders.
Sieger, hier ist Stephan
Championship lead
Suda.
after the second race of the season. Stephan Suda takes victory then as he congratulates there with Tobias Kitzbichler and Jakob Rosenthaler. Now then, time for the national anthems to play out here.
Nochmal Applaus für Tobias Kitzbichler.
First of all, we'll get the trophy celebrations underway. Third place trophy there for Tobias
Der
Kitzbichler.
zweite Pokal geht ebenfalls nach Österreich und ihr macht nochmal Lärm, Jakob
Second position though
Rosenthaler.
for Jakob Rosenthaler. The rider from Linz in Austria
Zweimal den
finishes
größten Pokal an
on
diesem
the podium for the
Wochenende.
first time in
Rastet richtig aus
2026.
für Stephan
Stephan
Suda.
His second win of the season. Great job from the
Und
Czech
zu
Republic
Ehren des
rider,
Siegers
20
hören wir
years
die
old,
Nationalhymne der Tschechischen
and he
Republik.
now leads the championship going into the second round. Top three celebrating then here in Sachsenring. Let's get some highlights of the race, shall we? What a race we've had here in Sportbike then. And looking forward to seeing more of that action as the season develops onwards. But now, of course, it is time to focus on the Superbike class, as the riders will be heading out of pit lane before too long and onto the circuit for their final race of the weekend. Excited to see how this one is going to play out here, Adam.
Yeah, really compelled to see where everyone's form sits after that first race. I reckon that some riders, we heard Stefan Zuda alluding to making changes based on warm-up. I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Florian Alt did much the same going into race one after warm-up and it didn't go the right way. Florian Alt starting from 4th on the grid this time. He dropped well down the order, didn't he, in race number 1, much to his bitter disappointment. Not the result that the rider who is always a championship favourite and of course was runner-up last year would have been expecting. At the end of it all, he was, where was he? 8th position, which is not what we'd expect from Florian Alt normally. From 4th on the grid, he'll be hoping for a podium, and I do wonder if perhaps he's kind of gone back after race 1 and said, whatever I had before, can I have that again, please?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's one thing having a bike that's quick over the course of one lap, like Florian Alt clearly has there, because that bike was competitive in qualifying, as you said, and lines up on the head of the second row of the grid. But getting it to be as quick in race trim, completely different kettle of fish, because you've got to factor in tyre wear, you've got to factor in the fact that the bike's on a full fuel load at the start of the race as well. So the characteristics, the way it's going to behave underneath you, are going to be completely different to how it would be when you're on a low qualifying run. So something for Florian Alt to consider there, but he's a very experienced head, as you say, on mature shoulders is probably the politest way of putting it for Florian Alt there. And he'll line up from that second row of the grid with Twan Smits and Tony Finsterbusch alongside for company. Interesting race, actually, for Tony Finsterbusch. He started P6 on the grid, ended up coming over the line in 9th position. So, again, a disappointing end to the race there for the German rider, and he'll be hoping for fortunes to turn around a little bit, actually, going into the race here this afternoon. Again, another rider who'll probably be looking at the data, going through everything and trying to make some setup changes, maybe changing a bit of preload on the suspension, changing maybe the rear swing arm geometry as well. And when we talk about geometry like that, it's really minor things. It's literally millimeters. Change it by 1 or 2 millimeters, and it can make the world of difference between your bike feeling like it's on top of the world or feeling like you're riding an old donkey. The upshot is that Finsterbusch there will line up in 6th position on the grid, and we'll see how he will fare from there, as the grid is now getting a bit more populated with the various team personnel here at the Sachsenring. But, well, let's talk about the race winner, Adam. Lukas Tulovic started it on pole position, led every lap but one in that race, cleared off into the distance, never to be seen again. I mean, he's the reigning champion for a reason, but can anyone do anything to stop him? That's the question.
It's a very good question. I think it's quite possible that someone like Suma or perhaps Reiterberger, with the right launch at the start of the race, could do something. But Tulovic has looked impenetrable for much of the last couple of for much of last season, certainly, in what was the IDM Superbikes before the change to EURO MOTO for this year. Florian Alt was his closest challenger last year. In the last part of the season, Alt kind of started to dip in form a little bit, and Tulovic was just, again, impenetrable, just kept winning and kept being at the front of the field. One rider I do want to make note of, Patrick Herbelsberger, not on the grid sheet for this race. He was at the back of the grid for race number 1, which is certainly not what we'd expect from Patrick, who's won here in the past. He is, though, unfortunately not taking the start for this one.
That's a shame for Patrick as well. He's on board that Honda CBR 1000 RR. I was about to say 600 there, but yeah, missed a lot of 2025 through injury. I wonder whether that's a legacy of the injuries that he suffered in 25, maybe not fully healed, or could be bike-related issues. At the moment, we're not 100% sure, but we do send our best to Patrick, and we hope that whatever issue it is that stopped the 29-year-old from making the grid here for race 2, that he gets it out and fixed, ready for the next round of the championship in a fortnight's time. So, riders then on the grid. There is Florian Alt's machine just being prepared at the moment. The number 66 Honda on the inside of the front row, or the outside as it comes down towards the first corner. See them putting the tyre warmers on, the paddock stands there as well, and Florian is a very experienced head.
Sehr schwierig, schwierige Bedingungen auch. Reifenthema natürlich ganz, ganz groß. Wie war es bei dir allgemein und was gilt es jetzt im zweiten Rennen besser zu machen?
Ja, war ein sehr schweres erstes Rennen. Es kam aber allerdings nicht ganz unerwartet. Also wir wussten schon vorher, dass es sehr schwer für uns hier wird. Wir haben ein gutes Rennen gefahren. Wir waren 5 Sekunden schneller als das letzte Mal mit dem Motorrad hier am Sachsenring. Also von dem her aus unserer Sicht gut. Aber die Konkurrenz hat halt richtig nachgelegt. Die Hersteller haben neue Sachen gebracht. Und wir müssen einfach gucken, dass wir mehr rausholen aus der Fireblade und haben jetzt noch mal alles auf den Kopf gestellt. Also entweder es wird besser oder es wird ganz schlecht.
Flo, wir wünschen dir auf jeden Fall alles Gute. Wir werden uns das natürlich angucken und hoffen, dass das vielleicht im zweiten Rennen jetzt etwas besser für dich abläuft.
Good to hear there from Florian out on the grid and hoping for better fortunes coming into this race. As you say, it was a bit of a one to forget, really. Just went backwards as soon as the lights went out and never really recovered from that, finishing 8th here this morning. Marcel Schrotter, he had a better race though. P2 at the checkered flag from 7th on the grid. He did exactly the opposite of what we heard from Florian out a few moments ago. Here he is down there at the number 23. Let's catch up with him.
Die WM-Prominenz neben mir, das fühlt sich sogar für einen Kommentator ganz gut an. Hast auf jeden Fall absolut gut gerockt, Marcel. Jetzt im zweiten Rennen noch ein bisschen was am Fahrwerk, am Setup gemacht. Thema Reifen natürlich ganz groß, um vielleicht dann auch etwas eher an den ganzen Jungs vorbeizukommen.
Ja, wir probieren natürlich, weil das war jetzt, ich sag mal, das Rennen die erste richtige Erfahrung, die wir dieses Wochenende machen konnten mit Reifenverschleiß, mit allem drum und dran. Es war ja bis dato eher Kurzruns und ein paar Runden, dass man irgendwie der Zeit schafft. Von dem her gehen wir davon aus, dass alle Anpassungen machen und deswegen mussten wir auch wollen und mussten natürlich reagieren und hoffen, dass wir einen Schritt machen können. Ja, von 7 kommen ist natürlich nicht so einfach, wie wir vorher gesehen haben. Der Zug nach vorne ist natürlich schnell weg, gerade mit dem Tempo, den der Lukas da an den Tag legt. Für mich ist wichtig, wieder ähnliche Leistung abrufen, unsere Duelle, die wir machen können, gewinnen und dann schauen wir, was dabei rauskommt.
Wir wünschen dir auf jeden Fall ganz, ganz viel Erfolg, werden das natürlich beobachten, was da vorne passiert. Diese junge Dame, über die bin ich auch sehr froh, dass sie jetzt mit von der Partie ist, das ist nämlich die Lilly, das ist die Tochter von KW. Lilly, schön, dass du da bist und uns hier trotzdem ja, bereichern kannst, auch hier als junge Dame. Dankeschön.
A couple of changes being made to the bike down there on the grid by the looks of things there for Marcel Schrotter, but I imagine he'll be wanting to repeat the same feat that we saw from him in the first race of the weekend here earlier on this morning. And given the pace that we've seen from him on board that BMW and the prowess that we saw, especially in the last couple of laps from Schrotter, he knows how to make it work. And I'm sure it will be a case of same as before for the German rider.
Yeah, he went from 4th to 2nd on the final lap of the race, which is very impressive stuff from Marcel. Maybe points to the fact that he had the bike in the right zone from a setup perspective, with the tyres being a particular factor here, with the highest power bikes, the highest weight bikes, the longest race distance as well, of course, at 18 laps. Here at the Sachsenring, tyres are always a conversation.
Jungs, und zwar möchte ich noch mal ganz kurz, bevor wir hier auch in die Werbung geben, mit dem Mann weitermachen, der hier auf P5 im ersten Rennen nach Hause gekommen ist und das ja, Heimrennen.
Ja, vom Heimrennen P5-Ergebnis gleich im ersten Rennen der Saison, bei dem Fahrerfeld auch noch. Da habe ich selber gestern noch nicht mitgerechnet. Der Plan für jetzt ist einfach, das Gleiche nochmal irgendwie durchzuziehen. Im Anfang vielleicht noch ein bisschen mehr Antrieb zu machen, dass ich bei den vorderen Leuten vielleicht sogar mitgehen kann. Weil gerade in der zweiten Hälfte war ich ziemlich stark vorn und mal schauen, wie es läuft.
Kevin August, wir wünschen dir alles Gute für dieses zweite Rennen. Freuen uns sehr. Geben noch einmal ganz kurz ab in die Werbung und dann heißt es für die Zuschauer hier und auch in unserem Livestream Rennen Nummer 2 der EURO MOTO 2026.
Well, let's get ready to go then. Race 2 on the way. The riders are lined up on the grid and ready to go for their second and final race of the weekend here at the Sachsenring. Earlier on this morning, we saw Lukas Tulovic continuing where he left off at the end of 2025 to take victory. He lines up from pole position with Hannes Suma and Markus Reiterberger alongside. Row 2 is spearheaded by Florian Out, who faltered in the first race yesterday by only, this morning rather, I beg your pardon, by only finishing in 8th position. He's ahead of Twan Smits, who stormed to the lead in the first race. He's ahead of Tony Finsterbush, who also had a difficult time at the office, only classified in P9 here this morning. He'll be able to make some forward progress from 6th on the grid. Next up on the grid, you've got Marcel Schroeter, who started the race in 7th position, of course, this morning, but he will line up in 7th place again and went on to finish in 2nd position at the checkered flag here today. So let's see whether he can repeat a similar feat for the second race. Jan-Ole Jenig and Soma Gorbe alongside for company. The next row is headed by Kevin Orgis with Lorenzo Zanetti and Jan Moore for company in 11th and 12th position there respectively. Kevin's brother Leon will line up in 13th position at the head of the 5th row of the grid. And then I'll have Milan Mirkelbach with Marco Fetz for company, with Christoph Benlick completing the 16-rider strong field. No Patrick Hobbelsberger, sadly, on the grid for the race here this afternoon. Not 100% sure as to what's happened to the Dutchman on board his Honda Fireblade. Clearly, though, something has gone awry, and we hope we will see him out in a couple of weeks' time when we head to the Czech Republic. There's the rest of the grid. Adam, looking forward to this one. Lukas Tulovic, though, started it on pole position. However, it was a phenomenal start on board that Yamaha for Twan Smits in the first race of the weekend here earlier on today. If he can repeat a similar feat, he could be right up there again.
Yeah, exactly. That Yamaha looked very, very quick out of the gates. We spoke just before the commercials there in German to Kevin Orgis as well, who worked his way from 10th to 5th position in that first race. So he could be one to watch, and he interests me as a proposition. I'd be fascinated to know a bit more about the process between him and the team, because he trained in Chemnitz at the BMW Motorrad dealership there as a technician. So he probably knows the bike underneath him better than most on the grid from that perspective. Very handy rider as well, a former 1000cc Pro Superstock champion, so very familiar with big bikes, as it were, and on decent form. But all eyes as we go on to this formation lap will be on that number 1. Lukas Tulovic has a mighty target on his back, I would say, based on his 2025 form and his hints at what to expect in 2026. And I think, quite frankly, chief among those who has a point to prove here is not the man alongside him, but the man who's also on the front row, Markus Reiterberger, who openly stated in the press coming into this season, I'm back to make sure BMW wins again. And to do that, he's going to have to beat the number 1 Ducati.
Yeah, he gave it a good go earlier on, didn't he? Unfortunately for him, it didn't work out because Tulovic's pace was just so impressive in the first stage of the race. He built out a gap and was never to be seen again come the checkered flag. And, well, let's see whether he can turn that around here this afternoon. He ended up involved in the battle with his teammate Hannes Suma and also the other BMW of Marcel Schroeter, who came through, as we said, from 7th to finish 3rd at the checkered flag. But the field now on their warm-up lap here, getting some heat into the tyres and the brakes. Of course, it's actually quite warm here at the Sachsenring as well, and tyre life and degradation was a big talking point in the first race, and we've actually seen that as well. We saw it in Supersport earlier on this afternoon, where one of the riders ended up losing grip. Dirk Geiger it was on the final couple of stages of the race, couple of laps, and he wore out his rear tyre effectively. So it's a case of managing both pace, performance with tyre life and longevity.
Yeah, no, exactly right. It's always a bit of a... everyone always says that motorsport is a game of chess, but I think here at the Sachsenring in particular, just about any category you drop into Saxony here seems to end up with this kind of chess match. And when do you finally get that pace up? When do you push at the end of the race? You don't want to do it too early, of course. You want to establish a lead in the very early laps, but then you need to settle into a rhythm lest your Pirelli tyre start to cry enough 5-6 laps early.
Absolutely. Well, riders making their way then on to the grid. Pole position once again occupied by Lukas Tulovic, with Hannes Suma and Markus Reiterberger joining him on that front row of the grid. Row 2 headed by Florian, out with Twan Smits on board his Yamaha, who was fast starting in the first race this morning. Tony Finsterbush alongside, and Marcel Schrotter, who came through from 7th on the grid to finish on the podium in P2. We'll be hoping for a similar feat here this afternoon. Green flag is waved at the back then. It's 18 laps of action ready to go for the second race for EURO MOTO Superbikes here at the Sachsenring. Red lights are on. Lights around, we're underway. Great start again from Lukas Tulovic. Nice one as well from Markus Reiterberger on the inside of the front row. Keep an eye out for Twan Smits on board the Yamaha R1. He's trying to do exactly what he did this morning. Schrotter's there on the inside as well, but Tulovic it is that leads from the two Alpha BMWs. They're squabbling for position, and Twan Smits is still there as well. He's into 3rd place, just behind Hannes Suma. So Tulovic it is that leads, Suma in 2nd, Twan Smits in 3rd, or make that now Markus Reiterberger, who's sending one through on the Yamaha's inside, but can't quite make it stick, so Righty stays in 4th for now.
Yeah, so interesting start to this.
Oh, Righty, sorry Adam, big moment out of the seat coming through the rise of the left-hander there. He got it all up and on the curb, and you saw him just about gathering it up, and he manages to hold on to position there, but look at the gap already that it's created with the top 3.
Yeah, he's going to be under great scrutiny, isn't he, here as he comes down the waterfall. Look at that huge train of bikes from 4th place back. Smits, meanwhile, has lost out to Hannes Suma. Suma is back to 2nd position, but here comes Smits to the inside. Takes that 2nd place right back. So those two are fighting it out, and Reiterberger has retained 4th place. He's going to really want to gap the rest of that pack.
Yeah, no doubt about it there. So Twan Smits, again, a textbookly fast start on board the Yamaha R1. We come to the end of the first lap. Tulovic is that lead. Smits in 2nd position. Over the line in 3rd is Hannes Suma. Now it's Markus Reiterberger, who's got a fair bit of work to do, and it's also cost time there for the likes of Marcel Schrotter, Kevin Orgees, and the rest of the field that were following behind, because they'll have had to have gotten out of the gas as Righty got the bike sat up there. And the upshot is that now they've got to close that deficit down. The good news is, of course, it's only the opening lap, and there's time to do the race here. There's time for them to get themselves back into that rhythm, get themselves back into the pace here, and try to close down the gap that Tulovic has already built up to nearly a 2nd at the end of the first lap.
Yeah, that situation that you described has certainly had some winners and losers. Florian Alt down to 8th place, so again, Florian has to work upwards. He won't be happy with that. And Kevin Orgees, we referenced him going from 10th to 5th last time in race 1. Well, he's 10th to 6th on lap 1, so let's see what he can do from there.
Yeah, good start there for the race for Kevin Orgees then, as well as Twan Smits. So they'll be happy with where they've ended up at this particular point in the race. For the likes of Marcel Schrotter and for Markus Reiterberger, they'll be hoping for some more forward progress. But Kevin Orgees there, right on the back now of Schrotter as we come through that penultimate turn. So there's a trio, a quartet actually, of BMWs all in line with one another as we exit that final corner. Great drive onto the start-finish straight here for Marcel Schrotter, and of course he is having the hole in the air punched in front of him by Markus Reiterberger and might be looking to launch an attack down into turn 1. Has a half look, gap isn't there for the taking.
Yeah, Schrotter was very fast out of the final corner, as you alluded to. I thought he might be there, but not quite for the time being at least. The leading of the GRT 56 machines. We'll see if he can work his way to the podium. He's got the two Master Oil Alpha Van Zon BMWs up ahead of him. Hannes Suma, Markus Reiterberger running 3rd and 4th positions. 3 manufacturers in the top 3 then, with the Ducati followed by the Yamaha, followed by the BMW. Quite impressive given the sheer breadth of BMWs on this grid.
Yep, great stuff also from Twan Smits, as we were saying about as well. Finished 8th in this championship last year with the best finish of 5th position. So, I mean, if the checkered flag fell now, that would be his best result. But we saw in race 1 a good, strong start on board that Yamaha. Eventually, though, he ended up fading towards the closing stages. Speaking of fading, Hannes Suma now falling into the clutches of his teammate Markus Reiterberger as Kevin Orgees has a look to the inside of Schrotter into the penultimate turn. Can't quite make anything stick on board that ORM Racing BMW. But again, certainly signalling his intention at this early stage of the race.
Yeah, very much making it clear, getting it in skywriting up above the circuit, seemingly, as they run towards the first corner. Is there going to be a move made? Reiter certainly having a look there. Righty Not close enough, though, for the time being. I think the danger man, though, here is Kevin Orgy. So I don't know if maybe he's pushing a bit hard a bit early here with the adrenaline rush of moving up the field, but he looked really aggressive on the back of Schroeter.
Yeah, he's having a great run here, is Kevin Orgis, the 26-year-old, and let's see what he can do in this one. He's the Pro Supersport 1000 Championship, part of IDM in 2024 and 2025 as well, but this is a really strong showing for him on board that bike there, just sitting in 6th position for now. The two Alpha BMWs lining astern with Hannes Suma versus Markus Reiterberger, or is the order about to be reversed? Again, Righty now getting his act together and still sitting on the coattails. No jump starts just coming up on our timing screen for any of the riders, so no such bother to worry about like we saw in the Sportbike race a few minutes ago. Tulovic it is that still leads, though. We come down the waterfall into the penultimate turn. Is anybody there for the taking on the inside? A move being made. Not close enough for Kevin Orgis on Schroeter at the moment.
Interested to see here what Orgis can do in particular, because I think for him, he's done part seasons in this series, 2024 and 2025. And you can come in at this stage wanting to do a full season, but the budget might not allow. Good results, though, will help that budget, and I think that's what they're going to be thinking. The family team, the Orgis brothers, Kevin and Leon, both in this field, and their team boss, well, that's their dad. So it is very much a homebrew operation, and I think that, yeah, a positive result, top fives, maybe even knocking on the door of a podium here for the rider of the 44, that could shore up his effort across the season here in Euromoto.
Yeah, not only is there, of course, the attraction of more sponsors on board that motorcycle, there's also a bit of prize money involved here in Euromoto as well. So that would do him absolutely no harm at all, given the cost of racing motorcycles. It's not the cheapest of things to go out there and do, especially in this Superbike category. You can see the two Alpha BMW teammates, again, still trying to squabble for position. And Righty, again, he knows he needs to get a move on in the opening stages of this race, because Twan Smits is some 2 seconds down the road on board that Yamaha R1. Doing an absolutely phenomenal job is Twan then to have just been able to get the gap over the rest of the field and left them languishing for the final podium place seemingly at this point.
Now, I remember having this exact conversation with you in the first race. Lukas Tulovic just disappearing up the road from everybody else. I said then, is he pushing too hard too early? But we've already learnt that lesson. He managed it brilliantly in race number 1. He just seems to have such a great edge there on board the Triple M Ducati Frankfurt entry, the Panigale V4R. Meanwhile, the Master Oil BMW still close together, but Reiterberger didn't get the best of runs out of the last turn. Has to remain behind Hannes Suma for now. But I do get the impression that Reiterberger desperately wants to see if he can hunt down Twan Smits.
One wonders about Twan Smits as well, because, as you say, he's got great pace at this stage in the race, but he faded like he did in race 1. If he does a similar thing here in race 2, then he could end up falling back into the clutches a bit. That Yamaha, as we know, is clearly very fast over the course of 1 lap, but has it got the longevity in its tyres? Does it eat them up, really, and is it going to cost him later on in the race? I imagine what he's trying to do is ride very fast, a bit like Tulovic is doing at the moment, to build up that gap, to try and give him that buffer when the tyres do eventually wear out. We'll wait and see what happens with it. I suppose the difficult thing for Twan Smits here is he is the only BMW, so the only Yamaha R1 on the grid. So there's no reference point. You can't go to another team and say, hey, what are you doing for the setup and how are you working your bike and managing the tyres and so on, because there's nobody else that's doing that. So it's a really tricky thing to be the only reference point that you've got.
Yeah, exactly right. That's, I think, Florian Alt still under quite a lot of scrutiny here now in 8th position. That's, I think, Jan-Ole Janig directly behind him. We'll see as they come across the line. Yeah, it is Janig directly behind. So Florian Alt, again, not sticking with the leading batch by any means. That is not the race that he was envisioning starting from 4th on the grid, but both Janig and Leon Orgis are right there with the Holzhauer Honda.
Yeah, Somagoba also just bringing up the rear of that battle for now as well, the Hungarian rider on board the BCI MW Racing Team BMW. So see whether he can get his elbows out on board the number 54 and become a part of the action. Sharp end of the race, Tulovic still continues leading. There's Twan Smits just going through the sharp end of your picture. Hannes Suma soaking up the pressure here from teammate Markus Reiterberger. So those two Alpha BMWs, though they're clearly pretty quick in terms of their qualifying trim, race trim, they don't seem to have what it takes to be sticking with the likes of Tulovic on board that Triple M Ducati as it stands for now. Just seeming to struggle to I'd say run similar pace because they're running relatively okay lap times. But if you look at Tulovic, a 1:22.682 for the reigning champion last time around. Suma and Righty were 1:23.4 and 1:23.3 respectively.
Yes, I do wonder though. Again, I am going to make the same mistake I did earlier in the day because Tulovic is running 1:22s much deeper into the race than he was a few hours ago. So I do wonder if he's maybe pushing the limits. He was half a second quicker than anybody else out there, which is a testament to his speed, but it could be a testament to what his tyres are doing underneath him. Kevin Orgis, meanwhile, there was up the inside of Marcel Schroeter for 5th place, and I think he may have got that done.
Yeah, we'll see when we come through and look at those two riders again, but certainly was looking for the move on the inside, wasn't he, Orgis? His leg was dangling as he came through into that first corner. There's Florian out with the retaining field. He's sort of a cork in the bottle here by the looks of things, Florian out, because he's got a real train of riders all following him so close behind. That runs down to about 14th, 15th place, doesn't it? 14th place, in fact, it is. So that's from 8th down to 14th, that sort of train of riders all within the same picture of one another at the moment. And, well, Florian out clearly needs to do a bit of work on board that CBR 1000 RR if it's going to be a bit quicker in race trim along this season.
Yeah, exactly right. And we'll see shortly here at the top of screen whether it is the 44 up to 5th place. Yeah. Yes, it is. So Kevin Orgis is through. And that means his next target is these pair of Alfa Vanzon BMWs. Hannes Suma, Marcus Reiterberger may come under scrutiny here from Kevin Orgis, who certainly, at least in this first phase of the race, really seems to have a ramp-up of pace compared to everyone else in this pack, not including Lukas Tulovic.
Yeah, just having a look at the lap times last time around for Twan Smits, we were wondering if he would drop off a cliff in terms of his pace of performance. At the moment, not so. 1:23.592 for him, a 1:23.757 for Hannes Suma, and a 23.848 for Marcus Reiterberger. So all pretty similar in terms of pace. Smits actually a little bit faster last time around. So the two BMWs there in third and 4th place respectively with Suma and Reiterberger. Then you've got Kevin Orgis, then Marcel Schroeter as well. And well, Schroeter just doesn't seem to have the pace and performance that we saw from him in the opening stages of this one. He started, of course, in 7th place in race 1, went on to finish P2 at the checkered flag, and well, the upshot is now that he's languishing down in 6th position, having just been passed by Kevin Orgis. So maybe they've made some setup changes between the first and the second races. Maybe it's the fact that the circuit's developed a little bit more, it's rubbered in, and it's just not giving Schroeter the same feedback at the moment. Or it could be what we saw from him in race 1, which is the more likely option. He's just sitting there biding his time and waiting for the right opportunity. If you remember back to race 1, he struck very boldly in the last couple of laps of the race, while sitting there keeping a watching brief on the riders knocking 7 bells out of one of each other in front. So maybe that's Schroeter's tactic all along.
Quite possibly. I'm looking at these four, of course, all BMWs, and to me it looks like Reiterberger, actually, see, Reiterberger's through into 3rd place, sorry, so there's been a change of position there, and Hannes Suma, 2nd in the queue, looks to me like the least comfortable of them. It looks like he's kind of bobbling a little bit more through some of the fast corners, just not looking as comfortable in the saddle as the other BMW riders. And of course we saw him fading particularly at the end of the race as well, so maybe that's a symptom of that. But Reiterberger through into 3rd position. He's got 3.5 seconds to get to Twan Smits. I think more pressing though is keeping those other BMWs behind him right now.
Yeah, heck of a task there for Marcus Reiterberger to close down the deficit to Twan Smits, who has done a phenomenal job, as we say. 7 seconds the lead that Tulovic holds over the riders who are sitting in 3rd position at the moment, just to give you an idea of the pace that we're seeing from Tulovic. He has backed it off slightly over the last couple of laps, down into the mid to low 1:23s. There he is, just going through the bottom of your picture. There is Twan Smits on board that Yamaha R1, and then it's that quartet of BMWs currently being led by Marcus Reiterberger. But doing a good job so far is Righty, at the moment the 4-time previous champion within the Superbike category here, formerly known of course as IDM, and he returned back to this championship, as Adam said earlier on, to try and bring the fight to Lukas Tulovic at the sharp end of this one. Also races, of course, as part of the BMW Endurance World Championship team, who led so much of that Le Mans 24 hours, but for a technical problem to deny them a possibility of victory. As there is Kevin Orgis underneath and through on Hannes Suma for 4th position.
What a ride this is from the 44 rider. I'm sure his dad is on the edge of his seat right now watching on. I think this would be Kevin's best performance potentially if things were to end now in this championship across his part season campaigns in 2024 and 2025. I don't think he's been anywhere close, this close at least, to the podium. He's doing very well for himself. A replay here getting into 4th position at the expense of Hannes Sumer. All fairly procedural stuff from him. Last time by, for the first time in the race, Lukas Tulovic was slower than Twan Smits. Let's see what his pace is this time by as we get a look here for 3rd place again. Here comes Kevin Orgis. That bike seems to be hooked up for him right now, Tom.
Yeah, really looking good here is Kevin Orgis then. So through to the final podium places into P3. Certainly not something that I had on my bingo card on board that ORM Racing BMW, but a great job nonetheless. P5 for him in race 1 and a possible podium on the cards here for Kevin Orgis, as Hannes Sumer looks to try and retaliate on his teammate, looking to try and get 2 for the price of 1 down into the first corner. It's going to upset the rhythm of Markus Reiterberger. Hannes Sumer goes through and into 4th position and sort of ruffles up his teammate there, really. I can't imagine that Reiter will be too happy with that one. And the upshot is, though, that the Estonian is through for 4th place as Orgis is well wide through the right-hander, and Sumer says thanks very much and goes through to take 4th place back.
Well, there you go. The form book means nothing, or at least the sector splits mean nothing. I thought Sumer, the only way was down, unfortunately for him, based on his last few laps. But there he is, right back up to 3rd place, having started the lap in 5th position. Orgis having a look to the inside at turn 8, which I can't stress enough is not an overtaking opportunity, guys. Reiterberger tried it a few times in race 1 of the weekend, of course. Reiterberger, incidentally, really now in the clutches, seemingly, of Marcel Schroeter, who, again, he might be starting to wind things up a little bit, knowing what he did in race number 1.
Keep an eye out for Tony Finsterbush as well, just to give you an idea of the gap whilst these riders are battling amongst one another. It's about 1.2 seconds or so, and Finsterbush hasn't had the same pace as the likes of his teammate Marcel Schroeter, who's involved in this gaggle of 4 riders. But if it comes down to sort of under 1 second or so, he'll be within striking distance. Speaking of striking, there is Marcel Schroeter challenging against Markus Reiterberger, and Orgis looking to try and get through on Hannes Sumer as well. Schroeter does get the better with a great launch out of the final corner and goes through on Markus Reiterberger to take P5 as we come into turn 1.
Yeah, Schroeter then for 5th position. Orgis trying for P4 right now. He will have been aware, I imagine he probably watched the race back. He wouldn't have seen it with his own eyes in race 1, but he will know that Schroeter was so efficient and fast at the last phase of the race 1 earlier in the day. So he wants to get Sumer between himself and Schroeter before too long, I'm sure. Reiterberger will be riding frustrated though now, down to 6th position. Again, he wants podiums, he wants strong points finishes to try and challenge for a championship that he's won 4 times previously.
Yeah, righty, not going his way so far on his return to the German Championship, here now known as EURO MOTO, and we'll see whether those fortunes can be turned around as we head into the Czech Republic next time out. Of course, going to Brno, going to Most as well, and lots of racing coming up in this championship over the course of the 2026 season. Tulovic it is that still leads with now 4 laps to go here at the Sachsenring. Smits there in 2nd position, over the line last time around. Tulovic starting to pick up the pace just a little bit more. Smits' pace starting to not go off the boil a little bit, but he was about 0.3 of a second slower than the likes of Sumer and Orgis, etc. Just something to keep an eye on in the closing stages of this race, because we saw a similar thing there for Smits last time out. And again, he could have made some changes to the bike. Maybe the setup is okay. Maybe he's just backing up the pace to give himself that buffer. But he's got 4.2 seconds over Hannes Sumer, so he can afford to just not run at sort of 10/10 for the closing stages of this one and save a bit of tyre.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think that's probably exactly what's going on with Smits, having learned a bit of a lesson from race number 1. That time across the line was the first time the field as a whole had been split by more than 30 seconds, with Christoph Bienlek taking up the rear in 16th place, just over 30 seconds back from that man Tulovic going through our screen. That's a fairly tight field spread after 13 laps of this circuit. Very impressed by just how close things are looking this year in the grand scheme of things in the EURO MOTO Superbikes. There is Florian Alt, who I think much to his relief only has one rider behind him now, but that is Leon Orgis just behind him. And yeah, unfortunately, while he's under less pressure, he's still in 8th place, and that's going to be a weekend to forget, I think, in the bigger picture.
Yeah, younger brother to Kevin is Leon Orgis, and finished P11 in race 1, currently sitting P9, so would be a weekend's best result for him. Unfortunately for Florian Alt, not so at the moment, would be equaling his result from race 1, but certainly not the pace and the performance and the position that he'll be expecting at the checkered flag, given where he was in qualifying. So a bit of work to do ahead of the next round in a fortnight or so. Meanwhile, actually, just wanted to mention as well about some of the other riders on the grid. You've got Soma Gorbe, who's on the fringes of the top 10, the 20-year-old Northern Talent Cup champion, won the Stock 1000 class here in EURO MOTO, known as IDM, back in 2024. He's having a good run of things, sitting in 10th position. That'll be his best result of the weekend so far. He was P12, the Hungarian rider, in race 1, so we'll wait and see what he can do over the remaining stages of this race, whether he can throw a challenge to some of the other riders in front. He's got about 1.1 seconds or so to catch up to the back of Leon Orgis, who's on the blue bike, second in your picture at the moment. So it's a bit of a tall order, but it's not out the realms of possibility. That being said, he is running pretty similar pace to the likes of these two of Alt and Orgis in 8th and 9th respectively.
Yeah, Soma Gorbe, of course, one of few riders on this grid who can claim to be pretty much as competitive when he hasn't got an engine as well, having been a Hungarian national team cyclist at under 17 level. So sometimes we call car racers peddlers, but in Soma's case, it's literal, at least between race weekends in EURO MOTO.
Well, fair play. I mean, I imagine he's probably going to be quicker at setting a lap record around it on his motorcycle than he would be on a 10-speed. But nonetheless, he's putting in a good performance there at P10 for him as it stands for now. We just saw a brief glimpse a little while ago of Lukas Tulovic, who's now nearly 6.6 seconds up the road of Twan Smits. The gap between Smits and Soma has come down to 3.2 seconds. So it's decreased a little bit there. And he's certainly backing off the pace by a few tenths of a second here is Smits. But again, I think he's just got enough in his pocket to be able to run quite comfortably. Here he is just going through on board that blue Yamaha R1. And Soma actually has been able to build out a bit of a buffer relative to the likes of Orgis and Schrotter behind.
Yeah, I do wonder again if Kevin's early charge has maybe left him a little bit ill-equipped in the grip department for the last phase of this race. Certainly Marcel Schrotter looking increasingly menacing on the rear wheel of that ORM BMW. Let's see if Schrotter on his GRT56 machine can make the move for 4th place. He's got the inside line. That looks pretty well secure for him, or just trying to cut back to the inside there, I think, but wasn't going to find space forthcoming. Tries to power it around turn 2. He's going to be careful here. He might lose out to Righty.
Yeah, that cost him there, didn't it, for Kevin Orgis? You can see he just got a little bit too greedy going through that second corner, and ultimately he's left him now, as you said, quite vulnerable to the advances of Markus Reiterberger. Through the left-hander we go, over the crest of the hill. This is where Righty got it out of the seat and sort of compromised his race, really, before it had begun on that opening lap. Through the long left-hander we go, and Righty will sniff an opportunity of challenging for position. Through into that left-hander's not an orthodox passing place. Through to the right-hander of the waterfall, and lining one up down the hill is a bit more like it there for Markus Reiterberger, but he would love to try and salvage something as to what has been a bit of a disappointing race, really, for him, given that he was on the podium here just a few hours ago in the opener. Down the hill we go. Has Righty got the opportunity to challenge into the penultimate corner on the penultimate lap? Not quite at the moment, but he'll know that Orgis is struggling with that tyre, and maybe the age-old experience of Markus Reiterberger will be coming to the forefront of this race then in the final lap of it.
Well, let's see. It didn't look like a great run out of the final corner, so I think a move at turn 1 could well be off the cards unless there's some supreme late braking from Reiterberger. He does close up nicely there into turn 1. He's just got to bide his time now and hope that a gap is forthcoming, and just maybe think ahead here as far as the waterfall to try and make a lunge there at the penultimate corner.
Sounds so aggressive on the overrun, these BMW M1000 RRs, and really lovely sounding machines. Tony Finsterbush has just lost out to Florian Out, who's made a late resurgence in this race, by the way. He's just gone up into P7. Soma Gorbe also has just lost P10 to Lorenzo Zanetti on board the Triple M Ducati, teammate, of course, to your current race leader of Lukas Tulovic, who's out on another Sunday ride this afternoon. Backed off the pace a little bit on the final stages of this one, but he's having a fantastic run of things, and here he is. We pick up the number one, who of course won the championship in 2025. He won race one this morning in commanding style, and he's going to repeat the same feat here this afternoon once more. Well, we're going to run out of superlatives before the season has really gotten underway, but what a ride from Lukas Tulovic. 2 wins in 2 races here at the Sachsenring. The champion is back on top once again with a perfect start to 2026. Twan Smits will come over the line to take his first podium of the season in P2 for the Aprico Yamaha outfit, and Hannes Suma on board the Alfa BMW will complete the podium in 3rd position ahead of Marcel Schrotter. Kevin Orgis did hold off the charge of Markus Reiterberger on the final lap, and well, another phenomenal ride from the number one, the Lukas Tulovic, your race winner, as he comes through on the cool-down lap to celebrate with the fellow competitors.
Stunning, stunning stuff from the number one, carrying that plate for a reason. The 25-year-old from Eberbach, he will be 26 next month, and how many trophies will he have by the end of May? Of course, we will be having our second round on the last weekend of the month in Czechia, so we'll keep an eye on his progress there next time out. But what a ride it has been. Last year he was incredibly fast, 9 victories on his way to that title, and 2 after the first event. That's an indicator that the form has gone absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, well, they always say form is temporary, class is permanent. The form was already good for Lukas Tulovic, and so the class has proven to be as well. Of course, next time out will be in Brno at the end of May. Riders then on their cool-down lap. Well, another fantastic race then here for the Superbike class. Lukas Tulovic takes it with his 2nd win in as many races. A perfect start to the season for the reigning champion ahead of Twan Smits. Great ride from the Dutchman on board the Yamaha R1. We were questioning whether he would fade in terms of his pace over the course of that one, but not so. He finishes in P2 ahead of Hannes Suma, Schrotter in 4th ahead of Kevin Orgis, then Markus Reiterberger P6. I think he'll be a little bit disappointed with that on his return to the EURO MOTO Championship. In front, though, of Florian Out and Tony Finsterbush, who lost a place on the final lap ahead of Leon Orgis and Lorenzo Zanetti, who got the better of Soma Gorbe right towards the end of that one. Jan Moore in front of Jan Olienig, and then Marco Fetz completing the points finishes with Christoph Benlik just outside of them. Well, podium celebrations will be ready to begin here in the not too distant future. Hannes Suma, something of a redemption actually for him after finishing in 4th place this morning. He lost out on that podium in the closing stages after a late charge from Marcel Schrotter. Thankfully, though, for him here, no such bother to worry about this afternoon, Adam.
No, exactly. That was just about what he would have ordered, I think. Obviously, he would have rather have been right at the front, but a podium to conclude the first weekend is good to work from. I think it really says a lot about just how high the level in this series, that someone like Lorenzo Zanetti has really struggled this weekend. Of course, he's done just about everything there is to do in bike racing previously, including outings in the World Superbike Championship, and fairly competitive ones at that, and came into the then IDM series in 2024 as the reigning Italian champion in 2023. Not only that, but he has an immense amount of experience on that Panigale V4R, given he's one of the riders chiefly in charge of developing it and enhancing it. But his presence is sure to be a competitive one later in the year, and I'm sure that moreover one of his primary functions, in addition to gaining results for himself, is guiding the team and guiding Lukas Tulovic how to get the best out of that bike.
And get the best out of the bike, he has done so. Really good job from Lukas Tulovic. And there is the number one machine back in Parc Fermé in the number one position. That V4R singing like a canary, wasn't it, over the course of that race? Just never looked to be in any bother whatsoever. A lot of experience on Lukas Tulovic's head. Just 25 years of age, but he's already won the likes of Moto E. He's won, of course, in the Moto 2 European Championship. He won this title last year. He was in World Superbikes in the last 3 rounds in Jerez in 2025 as well. So he's got a lot of experience on board various different motorcycles, and that experience clearly proving to be very beneficial indeed here at the Sachsenring. As we said, second place also for Twan Smits as well. Very, very well-deserved result on board that Yamaha R1. I mentioned it in commentary, actually, Adam, as well, because, of course, it's not the most favoured bike. He's the only Yamaha on the grid, so the fact he's been able to get that performance out of that machine is very impressive indeed.
It is, yeah, absolutely. Never easy to be the only representative, as it were, but I think if you're going to have someone behind you in this kind of situation, the Team Aprico guys are very up on their Yamahas in general and have run larger programs in previous IDM seasons, so I think they've got a good amount of data to work with. But yes, as soon as you're into the race weekend, not having that big data pool is a huge loss. No issues though for Lukas Tulovic. We're going to go down to him now.
Third place goes to Hannes Sommer.
Or to Hannes Sommer.
Hannes, was a really tough race. And in the, let's say, second half of the race, I really thought that you're going to be out of tire, but you still managed it.
Yeah, it was the opposite of race one, because race one I was fast in the first half, but then last 3 laps the tire was worse than wet tire. It was really finished. This race I saved much more in the beginning of the race, and yeah, I could still go fast in the end, but it looks like I save a little bit too much because Twan was too far gone. But yeah, still happy to finish on a podium. It's Mother's Day, my mom is here, so I can give some gift.
This was a perfect gift to your mom. Congrats once again, Hannes Sommer, for the 16 points.
P3 for Hannes Sommer, 16 points for him at the end of this weekend after missing out on the podium here this morning. He'll be very delighted with that. But P2 for Twan Smits, the Dutchman on the rostrum for the first time in 2026. Let's go and catch up with the 24-year-old.
Found a huge crowd and well-deserved, and you brought it to the podium.
Yeah, really unbelievable. It was, for me, a matter of time until I get here, but I didn't expect to be here so soon. Really unbelievable. It really clicked. In the first race, we struggled a lot with the tire, and in the end now, somehow it clicked. We made some small changes, and yeah, it worked out. The race pace was great, and yeah, it's just unbelievable. I'm really happy.
This was a gift to yourself after a huge effort you did also in Spain. Congrats once again for the second place, and see you on the podium. Twan Smits.
P2 for Twan Smits on the Yamaha R1. Absolute delight for him, but not as much for this man here, Lukas Tulovic. His second win in as many races.
Die hier das Doppelpodium an diesem Wochenende auch besteigen. Lukas Tulovic, komm auch du, greif zu.
Ja, hat zugegriffen direkt zum Saisonstart, nimmt 2 eingesteckt. Rote Ducati, die Version gefällt mir sehr, sehr gut.
Das ist kein Rot.
Doch, das ist rot, das ist rot. Schöne rote Ducati, also nochmal nach Rennen 2, riesen Dankeschön an mein Team. Die haben unglaublich gearbeitet den ganzen Winter, denen habe ich das alles zu verdanken. Und natürlich auch all meinen Sponsoren, alle, die mich unterstützen, riesen Dankeschön, und ich freue mich auf alles, was kommt.
Danke, Lukas Dulovic. Darauf freuen wir uns auch. Macht bitte genau da weiter, wo ihr allesamt aufgehört habt nach diesen ersten 2 Rennen. Und wir machen hier weiter.
What a ride from Lukas Tulovic then, continuing exactly the form he wanted to display in 2026. Question is, can anybody stop him? Of course, we head to Brno in just a couple of weeks' time, and well, there's an opportunity there for some of the other riders to get their elbows out, but we'll wait and see whether anybody can thwart the challenge on board that Triple M Ducati.
Rather appropriate, wasn't it, that he had a bag of Ducati-branded sweets, because he has been a kid in the candy shop this weekend.
Hey, how long have you been preparing that one for? That was quite
About
good.
20 seconds.
Andere Seite ist die Treppe.
Are the riders making their way then onto the podium again?
So, da ist er.
Only
Nochmal
Lukas
Applaus.
Tulovic,
Hannes
of course,
Sommer.
the only rider who was on the podium here this morning. So
Überraschend
place
und
here
überragend hier aufs Podest
the,
gefahren. Team Abreko
number
Yamaha.
85
Hat richtig
of Juan
was zu
Smits.
feiern. Für den Niederländer mit der Startnummer 85.
Sorry, beg your pardon.
Sein
Third place
erstes Podium
for
hier.
Hannes Sommer,
Und
isn't it? Of
euer
course, on the
riesiger
BMW.
Applaus
Second
für
place, of course, Juan
Juan
Smits on board the Yamaha R1. Great ride from him. As he said, wasn't quite expected to be on the podium so soon.
Und
a very well-deserved result.
Den
And a great
Doppelsieg
ride
hier beim Auftakt der
over the course
EURO
of
MOTO
that
am
race.
Sachsenring. Triple M Ducati Frankfurt.
And
aus
Lukas
Deutschland
Tulovic then on
mit
board the
der Nummer
Triple M
1, der amtierende
Ducati. 2
Champion.
wins in
Und
2
der neue
races. A perfect
Meisterschaftsführende.
start
Hier
to
ist
life in the
Lukas
2026 season for the
Tulovic.
reigning champion.
Und natürlich gibt es Pokale und die werden übergeben.
Well, time then for
Von
the
Peter
trophies to
Weidinger,
be
dem
presented.
Vorstandssport des ADAC Sachsens. Peter Weidinger hat den Pokal für den Drittplatzierten, für Hannes Sommer.
Great for Hannes Sommer. I think he'll be pretty happy with how things worked out there. Said he saved a bit too much tyre actually at the end of that race. Maybe he could have gone a bit harder towards the checkered flag, closed that deficit down and maybe even attacked against Juan Smits. It wasn't to be for him though. And the upshot is that Juan Smits on the Yamaha R1 finishes in second position. So 3 different manufacturers on the podium here, as well as 3 different nationalities.
Den Pokal dem Doppelsieger.
And the
Nochmal
upshot is,
euer
though,
Applaus
that
für
the
die
winner
Nummer
is
1
still
für
the same
Lukas
result.
Tulovic.
Lukas Tulovic on the top step of the podium once again. A championship lead for him, 50 points, a perfect start to his 2026 campaign. Well, phenomenal stuff then here at the Sachsenring. Thank you so much for joining us here for the action today. I really hope that you've enjoyed it as much as we have calling it. From Adam Weller and from myself, Tom Brooks, it's been an absolute pleasure. We'll see you, of course, in a couple of weeks' time when the championship rolls on to Brno at the end of May. Take care. See you soon.